Chapter 292. Netherworld was already very disgusting, and after being slashed by the Golden Wheel reincarnation explosion, it undoubtedly became even more disgusting. Hyojin did not even bother to look at him. He immediately prepared to use the Silver Wheel reincarnation explosion to completely tear this monster that was neither human nor ghost into pieces on a physical level. Hyojin did not want this netherworld to come back to life again and suddenly jump out from somewhere to disgust him. But just as Hyojin was about to make his move, Netherworld seemed to have a premonition and roared. "Then let's die together." Hyojin's face darkened, and he suddenly felt a trace of danger. Boom! 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 As soon as Netherworld's voice fell, the entire palace was plunged into an endless explosion. As the palace was surrounded by an abnormally strong barrier, forming a huge sealed space, the flames and airwaves of the explosion could not be vented and could only repeatedly impact back and forth in the palace. This undoubtedly increased the power of the explosion by several times, or even dozens of times. After a long time, the earth stopped shaking. As a large number of sealing techniques were destroyed in the explosion, the barrier around the palace began to slowly wither and finally completely dissipated. As the barrier dissipated, the smoke and dust that enveloped the palace finally leaked out. Under the blowing of the breeze, it spread in all directions, faintly covering the entire night sky. After a long time, the smoke and dust gradually dissipated. The palace was finally revealed, but at this time, the palace no longer had the previous outline. What entered the eyes was all ruins, and there was almost no intact building. Crack! At this time, a crisp sound came from the center of the explosion. At the center of the explosion, in the crater that was more than 10 meters deep, there was a dark and swarthy ball. There was a clear crack on the smooth surface of the ball. The crisp sound just now seemed to have come from this crack. Crack! There was another crisp sound, and there were more and more cracks on the black ball. Finally, the entire ball turned into smoke and disappeared into thin air. After the black ball disappeared, Hyojin's figure appeared. Phew! Hyojin panted lightly as he looked around. There is no doubt that the black ball that protected Hyojin before was transformed from 3 true seeking balls. If not, ordinary ninjutsu may not be able to withstand the explosion just now. One must know that Miko-sama's palace is filled with all kinds of sealing techniques, making it extremely sturdy, but such a sturdy palace was instantly turned into ruins by the explosion. It can be seen how violent the explosion just now was. Sure enough, there's a trap. Fortunately, I was cautious enough to sneak in at night. Otherwise, if I alerted Yomi, I wouldn't have the chance to meet with the Miko's soul. Under such a scale of explosion, if Miko-sama's spiritual body does not enter the gourd artifact at Hyojin's waist in time, it will inevitably collapse and dissipate in the explosion. After scanning around with the Tenseigan, Hyojin sighed softly. Miko-sama's palace symbolizes the thousands of years of inheritance of the Miko-sama in the land of demons. He did not expect that it would be destroyed in the hands of Yomi. After confirming that there are no survivors around, Hyojin did not delay. His figure flashed and disappeared into the ruins of the palace. Even if the Miko-sama's treasury was not destroyed in the explosion just now, it would have been looted by Hiriko and Shino. After all, for a researcher, no one will complain about money, and Hiriko was willing to help Shino to come to the land of demons. Most likely he came for the Miko-sama's treasury, so the ruins of the palace basically have no value to search. What's more, Hyojin has to face a bigger problem right now. Through the words of Yomi just now, Hyojin already knows that Hiriko and Shino went to Mai, and it is very likely that they have already arrived at my village. When he thought that Yu and Ziyuan are both at his home, and that Shino is likely to attack them, Hyojin fell into a rare anxiety. Flying all the way, Suijin finally landed in a dense forest in the territory of the land of demons. After looking around for a while, he muttered to himself, "This is the place." The distance between the land of demons and the land of fire is too far, even if he flies in the Tenseigan chakra mode, including avoiding towns and trade routes. It will take at least 3 or 4 days, and by the time Hyojin arrives at Mai, it will be too late. Therefore, Hyojin has to make a bold attempt. He wants to use the Tenseigan secret technique, soul descent technique, in a land of demons and rush back to Mai in the form of a spirit body. Because it is not a physical body, the flying speed of the spirit body is even higher than the Tenseigan chakra mode, and in the spirit body state, ordinary people can't see it, so there is no need to avoid towns and trade routes along the way. He can fly in a straight line and return to my village at the fastest speed. But in this way, there's a very fatal problem. That is, the release body left in the country of demons will be very dangerous. Not to mention being discovered by other ninjas. Even if it is accidentally discovered by a beast, it is very likely that it will be buried in the mouth of the beast. After a little hesitation, Hyojin quickly printed with his hands, and then pressed on the ground, psychic summoning technique. Bang! In a burst of white smoke, a huge figure appeared. How did it become so big? Looking at the big wild boar in front of him that is 5 or 6 meters high, like a 2-story building, Hyojin was shocked. The great wild boar that was summoned by Sui Jin had a blank look on its face. It shook its huge pig head as if it was trying to figure out how it suddenly appeared here. Stupid pig. Hyojin's face was black, and he roared, "Where are you looking?" "I'm below." The big wild boar heard the voice and lowered its head. Only then did it see Hyojin. It was a little puzzled. Why did Hyojin become so small? It hesitated and did not dare to come forward. Hyojin curled his lips. "Don't tell me this stupid pig can't recognize me?" At this time, the big wild boar circled around Hyojin, carefully smelling Hyojin's scent, and then confirmed Hyojin's identity. It huffed and puffed. Hyojin cut a tree hole in a big tree that can accommodate his body, and then set up a seal around the tree hole that can hide Chakra's reaction, and finally ordered the big wild boar, "Guard me nearby. Don't let any beast near this tree." The big wild boar nodded, not understanding. Looking at the confused big wild boar, Hyojin helplessly entered the tree hole, and then performed the soul descend technique. In an instant, Hyojin's spirit body jumped out of his escape body and floated in the air. After closing his eyes and sensing for a while, he found that in addition to the Tenseigan chakra reaction on the escape body and the big wild boar nearby, there was also a familiar Tenseigan chakra reaction in the distance. And that Tenseigan chakra was the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets located in the secret laboratory, and it was also the lighthouse that guided Hyojin's spirit body. Chapter 293. My Village. Looking at the stable and prosperous village in the night, Obsidian, who was standing on the roof of a building, muttered to himself, "Such prosperity is fake and fragile. I only need to touch it lightly to destroy it. This fragile world, what is there to cherish?" After sighing with emotion, Obsidian's body stepped back and hid in a twisting vortex that appeared out of thin air. After a while, the twisting vortex appeared again, and this time, it appeared in Naruto's room. Coming out of the vortex, Obsidian coldly stared at Naruto, who was lying on the bed. Naruto, who was sleeping soundly, was completely unaware of the sudden intruder. At this time, he was drooling while dreaming, imagining himself eating in a ramen restaurant. Obsidian glanced out of the window. He knew that Mai's team, 11, is waiting outside. In Team 11, the only one Obsidian fears is Uchiha Jishue. Even Kakashi, who was praised as a genius since childhood, graduated from ninja school at the age of 5, became a Chunin at the age of 6, and became a Jonin at the age of 12. As for Hyojin and Guy, Obsidian snorted disdainfully. Last place. Previously, when he learned that Hyojin and Guy were in Team 11, Obsidian's face, in addition to surprise, only a touch of disdain was left. In his opinion, the village really has no talents. Even Hyojin and Guy, the famous last place, were recruited into the Umbu, which should only recruit elites. Converging his divergent thoughts, Obsidian slowly reached out his hand towards Naruto, who was sleeping soundly. Shwa! Suddenly, a kunai shot into the room from the window, intercepting Obsidian's hand that was reaching towards Naruto. The corner of Obsidian's mouth slightly raised, but the movement of his hand did not stop, seemingly not aware of the kunai that was about to hit his wrist. Ding! Just at the moment when the kunai hit Obsidian's wrist, Obsidian turned his wrist, and the kunai penetrated and heavily nailed to the bedside table next to Naruto's bed. At this time, several figures jumped into the room from the window. They are none other than Kakashi, Jishuei, and Guy from Team 11. At the same time, Obsidian also grabbed Naruto, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, and dragged Naruto, who had not yet figured out what was going on, into the twisting vortex. Seeing that the mysterious man wearing the vortex mask actually made Naruto disappear out of thin air, Kakashi, Jishuei, and Guy were all taken aback. Among them, Kakashi snapped and asked, "Who are you?" Obsidian deliberately imitated Madara and said with a hoarse old voice, "Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I'll take it." Bang! After that, Obsidian's figure flashed and broke the window at the other end of the room, and in the sound of glass breaking, he disappeared into the deep night. Kakashi's face turned cold and said, "Guy, you go and inform Hokage-sama. Jishuei, call Kuroto outside. Let's go after this mysterious man together. We must not let Naruto fall into his hands." "Okay," Guy and Jishuei responded. In an instant, Kakashi, Jishuei, and the shadow clone of Jishuei, Hyojin, went in the direction of Obsidian's disappearance, while Guy released a distress flare and rushed in the direction of the Naruto building. Naruto building. In the middle of the night, the lights in the Naruto office were still bright. 3 generations Naruto, Danzo, Zhuan Xiaochun, and Mito Hamura were sitting together, discussing the 2 anonymous letters recently delivered to the Naruto building. The earlier anonymous letter had only a short sentence, which said that the traitor Hiriko was plotting to attack the village. The later one, that is, the anonymous letter that was delivered to the Hokage building yesterday, stated that the Uchiha clan is about to launch a rebellion, and it will happen in 1 or 2 days. Looking at the 2 anonymous letters on the table, Zhuan Xiaochun frowned. "Is there no clue about the sender?" 3 generations Naruto shook his head. "Although we have arranged for the Umbu to investigate, we have not found anything for the time being. The other party is very cautious and did not leave any traces." Mito Hamura said, "I suspect that the sender is in the village. He knows the layout of the Naruto building very well as the security situation. He may even be one of the guards of the Naruto building." Zhuan Xiaochun compared the 2 anonymous letters again, and immediately said, "The handwriting on these 2 anonymous letters is completely different. The sender may not be the same person." 3 generations took a deep breath of the pipe, then nodded. Well, the Umbu responsible for the investigation also came to this conclusion. There should be 2 sender. Hiriko whispered the name. Zhuan Xiaochun said, "I have some impression of this person. He conducted human experiments without authorization. You sent Tsunade and Jiraiya to arrest him, but he escaped." 3 generations didn't say anything, just nodded silently. Until now, he still can't forget the eagerness in Hiriko's eyes when he was selecting disciples in the ninja school. But because Hiriko's aptitude is too mediocre, so after weighing the pros and cons, he still chose Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya, who have greater potential, and abandoned Hiriko. Hamura asked straightforwardly, "Hizen, do you think he's a threat?" 3 generations pulled back his thoughts from the memories and replied, "He should have the strength of a Jonin, so he is definitely a threat." "Just an ordinary Jonin?" After muttering to himself, Zhuan Xiaochun pushed the first anonymous letter aside, then knocked on the second anonymous letter on the table with his hand and said, "Let's put aside the matter of Hiriko for now. This anonymous letter reporting the Uchiha clan's rebellion. What do you think?" Danzo, who has been silent all this time, said, "The threat of the Uchiha clan is far greater than the others. Regardless of whether this anonymous letter is true or not, we should pay attention to it. I propose that we immediately start a comprehensive surveillance of the Uchiha clan." 3 generations didn't immediately agree to Danzo's proposal and looked a little hesitant. The strangeness and power of the Manjikyu Sharingan of the Uchiha clan made even Sandaime Hokage, who has the title of Professor of Ninjutsu, and has been dominating the shinobi world for decades, feel a deep sense of fear. What's more, the anonymous letter says that the Uchiha clan's rebellion will happen in the next 2 days, which makes 3 generations have no choice but to pay attention to it. But once a comprehensive surveillance of the Uchiha clan is implemented, it will inevitably destroy the relationship between the Uchiha clan and the village. In this way, if this anonymous letter is a false accusation, then it will be extremely difficult for the village to repair the relationship with the Uchiha clan. Bang bang at this moment, the sudden explosion of a signal flare spread in the quiet village. Chapter 294. The explosion of the signal flare is extremely harsh in the quiet night. Danzo, Zhuan Shaochun, and Mito Hamura, the 3 consulting elders, also got up and quickly came to the window. Looking at the dazzling and eye-catching signal flare in the night, their faces are not very good. According to the rules of the village, unless it is an emergency, signal flare is not allowed to be fired in the village. Otherwise, if signal flare is fired randomly, the village will be in chaos. Therefore, once someone fires a signal flare in the village, it means that something big must have happened. At this time, an Umbu member entered Naruto's office and bowed to 3 generations Naruto and reported, "Naruto-sama, the signal flare outside is the exclusive signal flare of Umbu Team 11. 3 generations heard this, and their face became even more gloomy. Zhuan Shaochun and Mito Hamura were shocked. As a senior member of Mai, both of them naturally know that the mission of Umbu Team 11 is to protect the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki Vortex Naruto. Now that Team 11 suddenly fired a signal flare in the middle of the night. There is no doubt that something happened to the Maelstrom Naruto. A moment later, Guy, led by an Umbu member, came to Naruto's office. After listening to Guy's report, Danzo's eyes flashed, stepped forward to 3 generations Naruto, and said, "Hizen, Nine-Tails must not have any accident. Let me deal with it. Well, be sure to ensure the safety of Naruto. This matter is related to the QB, and Saname-sama was originally prepared to act in person, but considering the anonymous letter on the table reporting the Uchiha clan's rebellion, he had to stay in the Hokage building just in case. Therefore, 3 generations had to agree to Danzo's request. With the approval of the 3 generations, Danzo immediately led a large number of roots, as well as some Umbu members including Guy, and quickly left the Naruto building. Standing by the window, looking at the group of roots and Umbu ninjas that quickly disappeared into the night, Sandaime sighed faintly. This scene reminded him of the night of the Kyuubi rebellion a few years ago. With the departure of Danzo, only 3 generations, Zhuan Shaochun and Mito Hamura, were left in Naruto's office. Zhuan Shaochun said, "Rijan, the attack on Maelstrom Naruto is too coincidental and weird. We have to take precautions. If it's really Uchiha, swish." Before Zhuan Shaochun finished his words, a figure suddenly broke into Naruto's office. The speed of the intruder was extremely fast. Almost at the moment when everyone in the room noticed him, he was already in front of the defenseless Hamura and stabbed Hamura's throat. "You are." Hamura was shocked and angry, but the opponent's speed was too fast. He had no time to dodge. He could only lean his body back, barely avoiding the vital point on his throat. Swish! The cold light of the kunai flashed, and blood splattered. Mito Hamura flew back while covering his left shoulder that was scratched by the kunai. At the moment when they fought, because the distance between them was very close, although the attacker was wearing a mask, the experienced Hamura still noticed the scarlet eyes in the opponent's eye sockets. So his expression became serious, and he quickly warned 3 generations and Zhuan Shaochun, "Be careful, he is Sharingan." The black-robed, masked attacker did not stop there. Once again, with a speed as fast as a ghost, he pounced on Hamura, who was injured in the shoulder. Swish, swish, swish. Sandaime-sama immediately threw several shurikens, blocking all the routes that the attacker could take to kill Hamura Mito. Hearing the whistling sound of the wind, the attacker stopped and decisively gave up on killing Hamura and avoided the shuriken shot by 3 generations at a very fast speed. Taking advantage of this gap, Hamura's figure flashed, and he hid beside 3 generations and Zhuan Shaochan. 3 generations looked at the attacker coldly and asked, "Who are you, and what is your purpose?" Zhuan Shaochan was on guard and said, "This height, this ghostly speed, and the Sharingan, are you Uchiha Jishui?" In the Uchiha clan, although there is an endless stream of experts, but those who can injure Hamura Mitokado, the advisor elder, can be counted on one hand. Hamura was also a candidate for Naruto. When the second generation Naruto was in a crisis, he used the task of covering the rear to test the disciples around him. At that time, if Hamura was the first to stand up, the position of 3 generations Naruto would be his. So although his strength is not as good as Sarutobi, but he is also a powerful ninja with strength close to the Kage level. In Zhuan Shaochan's impression, the only one who can injure Hamura in a face-to-face confrontation, and the attacker's height, body shape, and speed in the Uchiha clan, is the only one who has the name Uchiha Jishui. 3 generations had already guessed this possibility when Hamura shouted that the opponent had Sharingan. But he didn't want to believe that Jishui would betray him, betray Mai. But the opponent's figure is too fast, except for Jishui, who developed the exclusive ninja body blink technique. No one else in the Uchiha clan can meet this condition. Naruto was assassinated, and the alarm in Naruto's building suddenly rang. A group of Umbu rushed into Naruto's office, protecting 3 generations and the 2 elders behind them, and the other Umbu groups were distributed in the corridor, outside the window, on the roof, and other positions, surrounding the attacker in 3 layers inside and outside 3 layers outside. 3 generations said, "Take off the mask. You have no way to escape." The black-robed attacker still didn't say a word. He looked around and seemed to be looking for a way to escape, but just when everyone thought that he would break out of the encirclement, he suddenly burst into speed, turned into a ghostly afterimage, and went straight to Sandaime Hokage. 3 generations Naruto looked at the incoming attacker, staring at the 3 Sharingan in the opponent's eyes. 3 generations Naruto's face darkened. In just a moment, at the moment when no one could react, the attacker passed through the front row of Umbu and stabbed 3 generations Naruto's chest with his kunai. Everyone in the room was shocked. And just when the attacker thought he succeeded, 3 generations, who was stabbed in the chest, suddenly turned into a mass of mud and along the attacker's arm, wrapped around the attacker's body, and trapped him. At this time, 3 generations, who was making hand seals, walked out from the other end of the room and said indifferently, "Since you are not willing to take off the mask yourself, then let me take it off myself and see who you really are." Seeing that Sandaime Hokage instantly reversed the situation of the battle, everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time, they were secretly excited. One by one, the Umbu sighed with emotion in their heart. As expected of Hokage-sama. Chapter 295. The attacker's whole body was wrapped in mud, and the mud was getting tighter and tighter, and his hands were forced to separate, let alone making hand seals. He couldn't even make ordinary grasping movements. But 3 generations didn't let his guard down. He knew very well that if the opponent was really Jishui, then his clay binding technique derived from Earth Clone Jutsu wouldn't be able to trap a Manjikyu Sharingan possessor. Therefore, while approaching, 3 generations also secretly guarded against the opponent's Genjutsu, as well as the rumored ultimate pupil technique Susanoo of the Uchiha clan. Suddenly, the attacker turned his head and stared at 3 generations. 3 generations looked at him and said, "Is he going to use Genjutsu?" There are many ways to deal with Genjutsu, and as a famous doctor of ninjutsu, 3 generations Naruto knows many small and effective ways to resist Genjutsu. As long as he is prepared in advance, ordinary Genjutsu will have no effect on him. However, the expected Genjutsu attack didn't happen. What 3 generations saw was only a gaze full of hatred. Just when 3 generations Naruto was surprised, the clay binding technique that trapped the attacker suddenly lost its activity and turned into a mass of scattered mud. At the same time, the attacker just broke the scattered mud wrapped around his body, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, he broke through the glass and disappeared into the night. Whoosh! Without needing 3 generations Naruto's order, a large number of Umbu chased after him and disappeared into the night. At this time, Zhuan Xiaochun performed medical ninjutsu on Mito Hamura and said to 3 generations Naruto, "Hizen, we can't hesitate anymore. We must act immediately. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." 3 generations Naruto nodded gently and immediately raised his hand. Instantly, an Umbu landed in front of 3 generations Naruto and asked, "Naruto-sama, what's your order?" 3 generations picked up the pipe on the table and said, "In the name of Naruto, from now on, the whole village is in a state of emergency. Summon all Jonin to the Naruto building." "Yes." The Umbu responded and immediately conveyed the order of 3 generations Naruto. 3 generations then said to the Shadow Guard captain next to him, "You lead the Shadow Guard to pick up Team 11 and confirm whether Jishui is in Team 11 or not. If Jishui does anything unusual, you inform Danzo and Kakashi to control Jishui." The Shadow Guard captain was a little hesitant. "Naruto-sama, then your safety." Naruto had just been assassinated under the nose of the Shadow Guards. All the members of the Shadow Guards present felt great pressure, so they were very worried that 3 generations Naruto would be attacked again. 3 generations waved his hand. "Go, don't worry about me here." Seeing that 3 generations Naruto insisted, the Shadow Guard captain had to lead the Shadow Guards out of the Naruto building. After 3 generations completed the deployment, Zhuan Xiaochun frowned and said, "Hizen, do you think the attacker just now was not Uchiha Jishui?" From a deployment of 3 generations Naruto, just now, Zhuan Xiaochun can clearly feel that 3 generations still have some trust in Uchiha Jishui. 3 generations Naruto did not deny it, but calmly put the pipe in his mouth. Zhuan Xiaochun was a little confused. Why? In the Uchiha clan, only Uchiha Jishui matched the attacker's body shape and speed. This point, Zhuan Xiaochun had repeatedly confirmed in her mind, so she was a little confused about 3 generations' judgment. Mito Hamura on the side was not immersed in the anger of being attacked and injured just now. At this moment, he has calmed down and asked, "Hizen, did you notice something?" 3 generations Naruto recalled the eyes full of hatred that the attacker looked at him before he escaped just now. 3 generations Naruto said slowly, "There is something wrong with his eyes. Even if Jishui chose the family and betrayed the village, he would not have that kind of eyes." 3 generations Naruto can deeply feel that the attacker's last look at him was a true expression, not a deliberate disguise. That hatred seems to have been engraved in the bones. There is no doubt that the attacker's performance throughout the whole process can be described as perfect, even to the point that 3 generations once thought that the attacker was Uchiha Jishui, but it was precisely the last look that revealed his true feelings, that revealed a flaw, which made 3 generations feel the aura of a conspiracy. Uchiha Clanland. An Uchiha Jonin hurriedly broke into the Patriarch's house and reported to Patriarch Fuyue, who was wearing pajamas. "Patriarch, we just received news that 3 generations declared a state of emergency in the village, and they are summoning all the Jonin in the village." Fuyue was suddenly shocked when he heard this, and his sleepiness was completely gone, and he asked, "What's going on? Did other villages declare war on us? Is it Cloud Village or Rock Village?" Naruto suddenly summoning all the Jonin in the village in the middle of the night. This is simply a war mobilization. So the first thing that Fuyue thought of is that other shinobi villages have launched a war against Mai. We are not very clear either. After shaking his head, the Uchiha Jonin who came to report said, "But it is very unusual that 3 generations did not notify our police force, and the summoning order was not issued to us. Immediately summon the Jonin." Fuyue frowned and immediately noticed that something was wrong. If the village is really threatened by war, then Naruto will inevitably notify the police force responsible for the security of the village, and the summoning order will inevitably be passed to the Uchiha clan, which has the most jonin in the village. But now Naruto seems to have forgotten the Uchiha clan, which is too abnormal, and the only explanation is that Naruto is targeting the Uchiha clan this time. I will go and summon the jonin. The Uchiha jonin who came to report the news responded and then hurriedly left. Fuyue immediately took off his pajamas and put on his combat equipment with a solemn expression. At this time, Itachi also rushed over and asked, "Father, what happened? Why is it so noisy outside?" Fuyue instructed, "Stay at home and take care of your brother." Itachi nodded and wanted to ask again. Swish, however, before Itachi could speak, the fully armed Fuyue used the body teleportation technique and disappeared from the courtyard. Looking at the deep night sky and listening to the noise outside the courtyard, Itachi suddenly felt an indescribable pressure. Although he did not know much about what happened, he was sensitive enough to sense that something was going to happen tonight, outside my village. Kakashi and Jishuei, as well as Jishuei's shadow clone who had transformed into Hyugin's appearance, all stopped in their tracks. Not far away, Naruto, whose hands and feet were tied and whose mouth was gagged, was struggling under a tree, moaning and groaning, as if he was trying to get rid of the ropes. Kakashi did not immediately go forward to rescue Naruto, but looked around vigilantly. Is it a trap? Kuroto, did you find anything? Chapter 296. My village. On a roof not far from Uchiha village, two figures in black robes stood quietly. These two people were none other than Orochimaru and Shino. Looking at the noisy Uchiha clan in the distance, the corner of Orochimaru's mouth curled up. He licked his lips and said with a smile, "The Uchiha clan is really in chaos. It seems that your plan is working." Shino chuckled and said, "You are wrong. It is their plan that worked." Like Orochimaru, Shino has never really regarded himself as a member of the Akatsuki organization. He joined the Akatsuki organization only to obtain the technology to facilitate his actions. In his mind, the revival of the Konoha village is his highest pursuit. Orochimaru glanced at Shino, who had a confident look on his face. Although his expression didn't change, there was a trace of displeasure in his heart. Obviously, after devouring the Morio demon, Shino's strength has not only greatly increased, but his confidence has also increased a lot. So much so that when he communicates with Orochimaru, he no longer calls Orochimaru. The slight change in the form of address undoubtedly reflects the change in Shino's attitude towards Orochimaru. Obviously, Shino no longer puts himself in a position of inferiority. Feeling the surging and evil chakra coming from Shino, Orochimaru was quite depressed. Once upon a time, whether it was Shino, Hiriko, or even the spy Hyugen, who he thought could be abandoned at any time, in his eyes, they were all small characters not worth mentioning. They were all ants that could be killed by him. But now, Hiriko, Shino, and even Suijin have all turned over and become powerhouses that even he is afraid of. This undoubtedly makes him, who is still stuck at the same level as before, extremely depressed. Seemingly aware of Orochimaru's mood fluctuations, Shino smiled and said, "Don't worry. You should be able to get what you want tonight." Orochimaru was a little regretful. "It's a pity that we can't find that Uchiha fire." Shino still smiled casually and said, "Why? Haven't you been coveting Itachi Uchiha's body?" Orochimaru shook his head. He's too young. Although Itachi Uchiha was very talented, he was only 11 years old. It was not the best age for the undead reincarnation. Even if Orochimaru could get Itachi Uchiha tonight, he would not immediately hold the reincarnation ceremony. Shino seemed to be reminding and warning. That Uchiha flame is the subordinate of Uchiha Shinichi. It's better not to do anything to her for the time being. Humph. Orochimaru snorted. Orochimaru is not the kind of narrow-minded person who holds grudges, but being humiliated by a 15 or 16-year-old girl is really difficult for him. A strong person who has dominated the shinobi world for decades. What annoyed Orochimaru even more is that after he passed the request to collect information about Uchiha Flame to Danzo, Danzo told him that there is no girl named Uchiha Flame in the Uchiha clan. Danzo doesn't have any sincerity to cooperate at all. In addition to his annoyance, Orochimaru wanted to get Uchiha Flame's body more and more. For some reason, he always felt that Uchiha Flame's Sharingan is different from other Uchiha clansmen's Sharingan. This feeling came from the intuition of his snake nature. He even felt that the pair of Sharingan and Uchiha Flame's eye sockets is more beautiful and attractive than the Manjikyu Sharingan of Uchiha Shinichi. At this time, the assembled Uchiha clansmen, under the leadership of Patriarch Fuyua, rushed towards the Naruto building. In Fuyua's opinion, instead of waiting for the 3 generations to gather all the Jonin in the village, it is better to take this opportunity to go to the Naruto building and ask for an explanation. If they can't communicate, they can also launch a preemptive attack before the other party has finished gathering. Looking at the large group of Uchiha clansmen leaving, Shino smiled and said, "It's time to start. Let's go." Orochimaru nodded. Immediately, the two of them disappeared from the roof at the same time. Not long after, Orochimaru and Shino sneaked into the Uchiha clan land. Because all the strong people in the clan have been taken away by Patriarch Fuyua, there is almost no defense in the Uchiha clan land at this moment. The two of them easily broke into the Uchiha Patriarch's mansion. However, as soon as they entered the courtyard, 2 kunai were shot at them. Orochimaru directly reached out to block the kunai, while Shino slightly tilted his head and avoided the kunai. The one who shot the kunai in the courtyard was naturally Itachi, who stayed in the mansion. He looked at the 2 people who suddenly broke in, and his eyes fell on Shino and asked with a sullen face, "You are Shino?" Shino did not cover his face, so Itachi recognized one of the 2 intruders at a glance. It was the wandering Dr. Shino who hired him and Hyojin to go to the country of Tion. Shino smiled. "Itachi Uchiha, I didn't expect you to remember me." Itachi looked at the girl standing beside Shino again. The girl's body exuded a cold aura. The palm that was pierced by the kunai was dripping with blood, but she didn't care, as if it was not her who was injured. At this time, Orochimaru casually pulled out the kunai nailed in his palm and said, "Your Uchiha is really keen. I thought you would only notice it when I sneak into the house." Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the wooden corridor. Itachi was shocked and shouted, "Sasuke, don't come over!" Just by listening to the frequency and weight of the footsteps, Itachi can easily judge that the one who is running here at this moment is not someone else, but his young brother Uchiha Sasuke. Orochimaru smiled and immediately rushed to Itachi. At the same time, while Orochimaru was entangled with Itachi, Shino's body swayed and rushed in the direction of the footsteps. Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, Orochimaru and Itachi in the courtyard were fighting together. The kunai of the 2 sides hit each other, making a burst of ear-piercing metal collision sound. At the other end of the corridor, Sasuke's voice came, "What are you?" Soon, in a low hit, Sasuke's shout came to an abrupt end. A moment later, Shino returned to the courtyard with Sasuke, who was a little dazed and drooling at the corner of his mouth. Seeing that his brother was caught by the other party, Itachi was a little panicked, but he quickly restrained his emotions and asked calmly, "What do you want?" Orochimaru stared at the scarlet eyes and Itachi's eye sockets and licked his lips. "I want you." Itachi was stunned, and then said without hesitation, "Let Sasuke go, and I will go with you." Shino smiled and said, "It seems that you love your brother very much. In that case, we can't let your brother go." At this time, Orochimaru took Sasuke from Shino's hand and said, "Either you come with me, or you give me the Uchiha Flame. You choose." Chapter 297. Letting Itachi exchange Uchiha Flames for Uchiha Sasuke was Orochimaru's impromptu idea. He has been holding a grudge against Uchiha Flames who had humiliated him before. Uchiha Flames! Itachi frowned slightly when he heard the words, and his face sank. Kuroto has never heard of the name Uchiha Homasubi, But he quickly realized that the Uchiha Homusubi that Orochimaru is referring to should be the Uchiha Homusubi who has been practicing with him every now and then. At this time, Sasuke, who had been punched heavily in the abdomen, also recovered and shouted at Itachi, "Brother, help me!" Listening to Sasuke's cry for help, Itachi was very anxious, but his face was still as calm as ever. 3 Magatama slowly flew in his scarlet eyes, ready to go. Orochimaru's mouth slightly raised, and a charming smile appeared on his face. He didn't stop Sasuke's cry. For him, Sasuke's cry for help was better than his own 10 or 100 words of urging. He had already felt the anxious heart under Itachi's calm face. Shino on the side crossed his arms over his chest, looking at Itachi Uchiha in front of him, like a spectator looking forward to what choice Itachi would make. Itachi didn't think for too long. He shook his head gently. "I'm sorry, I don't know any Uchiha flames. As long as you let go of Sasuke, I can go with you." After testing the degree of importance Itachi attached to Sasuke, Orochimaru took out a kunai and put it against Sasuke's throat. "I changed my mind. I want both you and Uchiha flames." Staring at the kunai against Sasuke's throat, the 3 Magatama on Itachi's Sharingan spun faster and faster, and the chakra fluctuations on his body became more and more intense. Orochimaru was shocked, but he smiled and said, "Why? Do you want him to die?" With that, Orochimaru slightly pierced the kunai in his hand into Sasuke's throat. In an instant, the red blood flowed down the sharp edge of the kunai. Sasuke's eyes were filled with tears, and he looked at Itachi pitifully. He tried to suppress his tears and not let himself cry out loud. He was afraid that others would look down on him, and he was even more afraid that others would look down on the Uchiha clan because of him. But the great fear made him unable to control himself, and the big tears still fell drop by drop. Itachi squeezed a smile at Sasuke and said softly, "Sasuke, don't be afraid. I will save you." Facing Itachi's gaze, Sasuke nodded heavily, gritted his teeth, and no longer called for help. What a touching brotherhood! With a playful smile, Orochimaru continued, "Itachi, my patience is limited. Now tell me your answer." Itachi said coldly, "I really don't know Uchiha flames. In our Uchiha clan, there's no one named Uchiha flames at all. You can verify this through other means." Orochimaru's face became gloomy. Previously, Danzo said that there was no one named Uchiha flames in the Uchiha clan, and now Itachi also said that there was no such person named Uchiha flames in the Uchiha clan. This made Orochimaru realize that Uchiha flames might just be a fake name. So he described the physical characteristics of Uchiha flames to Itachi, and then asked, "I'm looking for this person. Don't tell me you don't have any impression of him." He really wants to deal with Yain Senpai. After thinking to himself, Itachi still shook his head. "Among our Uchiha clan's 15 or 16-year-old female clansmen, there is no one who fits your description." Orochimaru was a little impatient and said, "If you want your brother back, then bring Uchiha flames to me." After saying that, Orochimaru directly carried Sasuke. His figure flashed and disappeared from the courtyard. Itachi did not pay attention to Shino, who stayed in the same place, jumped, and chased after Orochimaru. When passing by Itachi, Shino noticed that the 3 Magatama in Itachi Sharingan's eyes were rotating rapidly, and the speed of its rotation was so fast that it seemed to be linked together. At first glance, there seemed to be a black circle in the scarlet eyes, and he could also feel an indescribable aura from Itachi's body. Orochimaru seems to be in big trouble. In Shino's heart, such a thought suddenly grew. But soon he shook his head and drove this absurd idea out of his mind. In his opinion, a mere 11-year-old Uchiha flames could not be the opponent of Orochimaru, one of the Sannin. After restraining his thoughts, Shino closed his eyes for a while, and then slowly turned his head, looking in the direction of Hyojin's house. "Is he there?" Shino sneaked into Mai this time. In addition to returning a favor to Orochimaru and assisting Orochimaru to hunt Uchiha, there's a more important purpose, and that is to devour Zeuen, who has the power of the Miko. After obtaining part of Orochimaru's undead reincarnation technology and Hiriko's chimera technique, Shino found another way, and combined part of the technology of the artificial tailed bee scroll, directly completed the devouring of the demon Morio, and became a Morio's Jinchuriki that can suppress the will of the demon Morio. After becoming a Morio's Jinchuriki, his brain obtained a lot of information related to Morio and the Miko, and he understood that the demon Morio and the Miko of the country of demons are actually two sides of the same coin. The demon Morio represents evil, and the Miko represents light. As long as he completely devours the demon Morio and the Miko who has the power of the Miko, he will be able to obtain the power of both sides and become an existence that surpasses the tailed beast. However, what he didn't expect was that when he broke into the Miko's palace, the Miko had already passed her power to her young daughter, Ziyuan, and sent Ziyuan away in advance, and also placed a temporary seal on Ziyuan's body, blocking his perception of Ziyuan. But with the passage of time, the effect of the temporary seal on Ziyuan's body is gradually fading, so Shino can perceive that Ziyuan is in my village, and even the approximate location of Ziyuan. The reason why the Miko didn't directly give the bell to Ziyuan, but placed a temporary seal on Ziyuan's body, is considering that Ziyuan may encounter danger on the way to my village, and the temporary seal can't completely suppress the power of the Miko in Ziyuan's body. Therefore, in the event of a crisis, Ziyuan can break the seal and use her power to protect herself. And if the bell is directly given to Ziyuan, the power of the Miko in Ziyuan's body will be suppressed by the bell. And at that time, if she encounters danger, Ziyuan won't even have the ability to resist. After perceiving the approximate location of Ziyuan, Shino didn't delay and immediately rushed over there. He didn't tell anyone about the matter of devouring the power of the Miko, not even his partner Orochimaru and his partner Hiriko of the Akatsuki organization. Chapter 298. Huff, huff. Listening to the whistling wind in his ears, Hyojin subconsciously shrank his neck. For some reason, he felt that his body was getting colder and colder, but he was clearly in the form of a spirit body at the moment, and it stood to reason that he should not be affected by the cold and warm. Flying a long distance in the state of a spirit body was a first experience for Hyojin. The first feeling that came to him was that it was fast, incomparably fast. Even though he was used to the flying speed of the Tenseigan chakra mode, he still felt that the spirit body's flight was really as fast as lightning. However, soon, the discomfort appeared one by one. The first discomfort that appeared was none other than the cold. A spirit body without a body should not be able to feel the cold and heat, but Hyojin did not ignore this discomfort. He faintly felt that the reason why his spirit body felt cold was because the Tenseigan chakra contained in his spirit body was rapidly being consumed. It's only been a while, but I already feel all kinds of discomfort. It seems that my spirit body is still too weak. After the witch lost her spirit body lasted for nearly a month, and she still retained a very strong chakra, which showed that the strength of the witch spirit body was very high. During the rapid flight, although the consumption of Hyojin's spirit body was far above the witch's, in terms of the strength of the spirit body, Hyojin felt that the strength of his spirit body was obviously weaker than the witch's spirit body. And the spirit body of Indra and Otsutsuki Azura were so strong that they could continuously reincarnate for thousands of years, and Hyojin couldn't even compare. As for the Sage of Six Paths, who didn't even need to reincarnate and directly stayed in the shinobi world in the state of spirit body, Hyojin couldn't even guess how strong the other party's spirit body was. The reason why Hyojin can easily defeat many strong enemies is not because his strength has really reached the level of Six Paths, but because of the incomparably powerful Tenseigan chakra mode of his Tenseigan. In the Tenseigan chakra mode, he was able to condense a truth-seeking ball that contained the 7 attributes of Yin, Yang, and 5 elements chakra, even though he only had the Yin-Yang release chakra mode. This way, he could temporarily raise his level to the six-path level. Without knowing the details of the truth-seeking ball, even if Uchiha Ryota has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, it would be difficult for him to resist Kuroto's attack. Of course, it is precisely because the truth-seeking ball condensed under the Tenseigan chakra mode is a kind of trick that borrows the special pupil power of the Tenseigan. So for Hyojin, the truth-seeking ball is a great burden. It can be said that whether it is the consumption of the truth-seeking ball or the strength of the truth-seeking ball, the truth-seeking ball condensed by Hyojin under the Tenseigan chakra mode is inferior to the truth-seeking ball condensed by a true six-path level powerhouse. Therefore, once the enemy knows the details of the truth-seeking ball, they will avoid Hyojin's sharpness and deal with Hyojin. Then Hyojin will have a headache. This is also the reason why no matter how much Uchiha Ryota begged before his death, Hyojin refused to let go. It is because he knows that he is not a true six-path level, so he did not dare to reveal his details. If Kuroto wasn't able to judge how far away he is from the six-path level before, then after using the spirit body to fly for such a long distance, he deeply realized that whether it is the strength of his soul or the strength of his chakra, he is still far away from the true six-path level. It can be said that there is a qualitative difference. Damn it. Gradually, Kuroto felt that his consciousness also began to blur a little. This is obviously not a good sign. It undoubtedly means that Hyojin's spirit body is approaching its limit, and there is a possibility that it will collapse at any time. Fortunately, my village is right in front of him. Otherwise, Hyojin will really be in a dilemma. After a while, Hyojin's spirit body flew over my village. At this moment, the village has fallen into chaos. Some ninjas are gathering in the direction of the Naruto building, while others are evacuating the villagers in the streets. What happened? Did the Akatsuki launch an all-out attack on the village? Puzzled, Hyojin looked carefully again and found that although the village is chaotic, there seems to be no fighting. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that there is a spirit body flashing over the Hyuga clan's land and then disappeared. Huh, why is there a spirit body in the clan's land? Is there someone using a spirit body to inquire about the situation in the village? Suddenly, Hyojin thought of the Kumo spy hidden in the Hyuga clan before. If the spy knows some kind of secret technique and can move in the form of a spirit body, then it would be easy for him to pass the layout of the Hyuga clan mansion to Watanabe and help him sneak into the Hyuga clan mansion to kidnap Hinata. He should have found me, so he retreated. After a pause, Hyojin sneered, "Humph, you are lucky this time." Hyojin doesn't have the time to delve into the matter of the Kumo spy at this moment. He can feel that his consciousness is getting more and more blurred, and even concentrating on thinking is a little difficult. So he didn't dare to stay over the village and directly flew to his secret laboratory in the Forest of Death. After a while, Hyojin's spirit body came to the laboratory. Looking at the two large nutrition tanks in front of him, Hyojin weighed the pros and cons. In these two nutrition tanks, one contains the water clone and the other contains the fire clone, and what he is weighing is which clone is more suitable to use at the moment. Soon, Hyojin made up his mind and put his spirit body into the fire clone. Because the gourd artifact is next to the Een body, without the support of the Ryumai chakra, the strength of the water clone will undoubtedly be greatly reduced. If it really encounters Hiriko and Shino, the water clone will probably have a hard time dealing with them. Moreover, the ice release ninjutsu is too conspicuous. Once it is used in the village, it will immediately be besieged by the ninjas of the same village. After all, the most famous ice ninja in the shinobi world is Suijin of Amatsukami. Although the fire clone is far inferior to the water clone in terms of development, the fire clone has a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, which alone is enough to make up for the other shortcomings of the fire clone. Phew! After climbing out of the large nutrition tank, Hyojin didn't care about his wet body, leaned against the glass of the large nutrition tank, and breathed a long sigh of relief. The feeling of his spirit body on the verge of collapse just now was really uncomfortable. At this moment, he realized how reckless and dangerous his previous decision was. If his Een escape body was any further away from the village, his spirit body would probably have collapsed halfway. Chapter 299. The attacker who escaped from a Naruto building was extremely fast. With just a few ups and downs, he jumped far away from the core area of the village. The pursuing Umbu didn't give up because of this. For the enemy who dared to assassinate Naruto, the Umbu would never be merciful, so they didn't hesitate to use their physical strength and fully activated the body flicker technique to follow closely behind the attacker. Humph! Looking back at the Umbu who were still chasing behind him, the attacker's face was filled with an irrepressible killing intent. So he made up his mind and landed on a long street. At this time, the long street was very noisy. There were villagers who took refuge with their families everywhere. No one knew what happened, so there was chaos everywhere. The attacker stood quietly in the crowd, looking at the Umbu who were chasing after him with a look of contempt. Swish, swish, swish. The Umbu who followed him also arrived at the long street one after another. They were scattered around the long street, or on the street, or on the eaves, or on the roof, faintly forming an encirclement surrounding the black-robed attacker in the center. The appearance of the Umbu immediately made the villagers on the street aware that something was wrong. Many of the villagers in the village were the families of the ninjas. The sudden appearance of a large number of ninjas made them know that there was a high possibility of a fight breaking out here, so there was no need for the Umbu to warn them. The villagers spontaneously scattered. Soon, only the attacker and the Umbu were left on the street. Glancing at the Umbu who were chasing him, the attacker smiled and said, "Are you the only ones who are chasing me?" The Umbu heard this and looked at each other. There were a total of 3 squads and 12 Umbu who were chasing the attacker. If they were only dealing with one enemy, the size of the pursuing force was not small. The cold gaze of the attacker swept across the bodies of the Umbu members one by one. According to the requirements of the leader, this action can't reveal their own information, so the attacker suppressed the fierce killing intent in his chest from the beginning. If I kill them all, then no one will know about me. The attacker chuckled, then slowly raised his arms and began to form a seal. The Umbu naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. When the attacker had the momentum to print, they also began to print and cast ninjutsu. Earth escape, earth prison technique. Fire escape, fire dragon flame bullet. Wind escape, wind howl. In an instant, the Umbu used the binding type earth release ninjutsu and the offensive type fire release and wind release compound ninjutsu. However, the attacker didn't dodge. Instead, he opened his hands slightly and reached out towards the incoming fire and wind release ninjutsu. Shoo! With a deflating sound, the extraordinary fire release and wind release compound ninjutsu inexplicably disappeared in the palm of the attacker. At the same time, the attacker just lightly stomped his feet, and the earth release ninjutsu that just rose from the ground collapsed. He absorbed our ninjutsu. Could it be the legendary underworld escape blood inheritance? But he from the Uchiha clan. The attacker's lips curled into a mocking smile, and his figure suddenly disappeared on the spot like a ghost. Swish! As if in a flash, the attacker appeared behind an Umbu. Before the Umbu could react, he saw a dark palm piercing his chest from behind. At this time, another Umbu immediately waved his long sword and slashed at the attacker. This Umbu had been studying the sword for more than 10 years. Even among the Umbu experts, he was outstanding, so he was very confident in his attack. However, at the moment when the long sword was about to hit the attacker didn't dodge, but just raised his arm, as if he wanted to use his arm to block the sharp long sword. The Umbu was instantly overjoyed and thought to himself, "Got it!" Clang! The smile on the corner of the Dark Tribe's mouth had not yet completely opened when an ear-piercing sound of metal rang in his ears. Then he was shocked to find that the sword that had been with him for more than 10 years not only failed to cut off the enemy's arm, but also broke into 2 pieces. Puffed! Before the Umbu could accept the fact in front of him, his chest was pierced by the attacker's palm, and he fell into a pool of blood like his colleague. His body is strange. Don't fight him in close combat. But ninjutsu is useless against him. Trap him with the ninja equipment first. In a few words, the Umbu reformulated a new strategy. However, the attacker didn't give them time to carry out the strategy. Every time the attacker flashed like a ghost, he would take away a life. In just a few breaths, more than half of the 12 Umbu were lost. Retreat. After there were only 3 people left, the Umbu leader gave the order to retreat. Still want to run? The attacker stretched out both his palms towards the 3 Umbu who were preparing to retreat, and instantly, a wave of air shot out from his palms. With the breath of the air, the 3 Umbu's bodies went limp, and they fell to the ground one after another. My chakra. He can actually absorb our chakra through the air. He really has the nether release, Kekii Genkai. The attacker walked over with a sneer and casually shot 2 kunai, killing 2 Umbu, and then walked in front of the Umbu leader, stepped on his head, and said, "Weakling." Crack. After saying that, the attacker stepped on the Umbu leader's head, crushing it along with the Umbu mask. After dealing with all the Umbu ninjas who were chasing after him, the attacker's body flickered and disappeared in the middle of the street. Not long after, the attacker came to a forest outside the village. At this time, Zetsu poked half of his body out of the ground and asked the attacker, "Hiriko, did the operation go smoothly?" The attacker who tried to assassinate Naruto was none other than Hiriko, who had 5 Kekii Genkai. He took off the black robe on his body and casually replied, "Well, it went well." Zetsu stared at Hiriko, who was in front of him. He saw that after Hiriko took off the black robe, the muscles in his body began to wriggle, and his body also changed from the appearance of Jishue to his original size. Zetsu laughed and said, "This move of yours is much more useful than the transformation technique." Hiriko smiled proudly. The Onigiri technique's ability to control one's body was extraordinary. In a short period of time, Hiriko could control his muscles and bones to change into any body shape. After looking around, Hiriko asked, "Where is Shino? Shouldn't he be here to help me?" Zetsu spread his hands. In the village, bang, with a muffled sound, one of Mai's Chunin was sent flying and slammed into the wall. Shino clapped his hands and said, "Courting death." The current Shino was no longer the ordinary body he used to have. Now he had the back of a tiger and waist of a bear, and his muscles were bulging. Just by looking at his appearance, one could see that his body contained incomparable, terrifying power. Chapter 300. Glancing at the my ninja who had fallen into the bricks and had no breath, Shino clenched his fists and felt the strength of his body. He smiled and said, "This is the perfect body." Shino felt that his body contained endless power. Even if it was just a casual punch, it could exert a terrifying power that was unimaginable in the past. So this is the Jinchuriki. Shino couldn't help but sigh. At this time, another my ninja who was responsible for guiding the villagers to take refuge found Shino and asked, "Who are you?" Bang! Shino's figure flashed and punched the my ninja's abdomen. The my ninja who was punched in the abdomen had his eyes bulging out. He vomited blood and fell to the ground. He opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. Shino smiled and didn't pay any more attention to this Konoha ninja. Shino's punch just now had shattered the heart and lungs of the my ninja. If he couldn't be treated immediately, the my ninja could only hold on for 4 or 5 minutes at most. After sensing Ziyuen's location, Shino walked over slowly. It didn't take long for Shino to arrive outside the courtyard of Hyojin's house. After looking at the small courtyard of Hyojin's house, Shino lifted his foot and kicked the door of Hyojin's house. Boom! The loud noise in the yard immediately alerted Kuroto, Ziyuen, and ASU. They rushed out of the house and saw Shino blocking the door of the courtyard. Looking at the broken courtyard door, Kuroto quickly turned on the Byakugan and asked vigilantly, "Who are you, and what do you want?" Although Ziyuen has never met Shino before, perhaps it is because of Miko-sama's connection to Morio that she felt an innate resistance and disgust toward Shino. ASU held the longbow and stood in front of the shivering Ziyuen. With just a glance, Shino noticed his target, Ziyuen. Just as Ziyuen was able to sense him, he was also able to sense in who possessed the power of a Miko maiden. So even though the two of them had never met before, he was still able to recognize her at a glance. Shino then moved his gaze to Yui, who had activated the Byakugan and was in a soft fist stance. Perhaps feeling that he had won, Shino, who was in a good mood, teased, "The Hyuga clan, you remind me of an old friend. His name is Hyojin. You should know him. Are you here to cause trouble for Jean?" Startled for a moment, Yui immediately warned, "This is my village, not a place where you can mess around." Shino chuckled and shook his head. "Find trouble with him? No, no, no. I'm not interested in a nobody like him." With that said, Shino took a step forward and walked towards Ziyuan. The thought that he would soon be able to devour the power of the Miko-sama and become an existence above the tailed beast made Shino extremely excited. ASU immediately drew her bow and knocked an arrow. "Stop!" Shino ignored ASU's warning. The bow and arrow did not deter him at all. With a smile on his face, he walked towards Ziyuan step by step. Swish! ASU no longer hesitated and immediately shot an arrow. Shino flicked his finger lightly and flicked away the arrow that was shot at him. Without stopping, he said, "Don't make meaningless resistance. Accept your destiny." At this time, Yui had also seen that Shino's target was Hyojin's guest, Yuen. So she said to Yuen and ASU, "You guys run, I'll stop him." "Do you really think you can stop me?" Shino's figure flashed and appeared in front of Yui, and he was about to throw a punch. Swish suddenly, in the sound of the wind, a long sword with a cold light flew over. Shino sidestepped the long sword, and then turned his eyes to the figure standing on the courtyard wall. The figure that suddenly appeared was naturally Hyojin, who had rushed over using the fire release clone. He looked at Shino coldly, and his killing intent seemed to be substantial. Yui was almost hit by Shino, and Hyojin's heart was in his throat. "It's you?" Shino recognized the person in front of him. It was Uchiha Flames, whom Orochimaru had been thinking about. So he asked unhappily, "Why are you getting in my way?" Hyojin did not answer, but gently jumped off the wall and said to Yui, Ziyuan, and the others who were still in shock, "Leave this to me. You guys go quickly." Yui looked up and down at Hyojin, who had used the fire release clone. She couldn't tell why, but she always felt that this 15 or 16-year-old girl in front of her was very familiar. But after carefully recalling, she found that she seemed to have never seen this person before. So she asked warily, "Who are you?" Hyojin looked helpless and didn't know how to explain, so he had to say with a cold face, "Go to the Hyuga clan and hide. This is not something you can intervene in." Yui didn't hesitate much and led Ziyuan and Ase to the back door. Shino's body flicker technique just now easily got rid of her Byakugan's insight, so she knew that with her strength, she couldn't stop Shino at all. At this time, if she didn't escape, she might not have a chance to escape. Looking at the figures of Yui and the others leaving, Hyojin was a little relieved and thought to himself, "If I were a step later, it would be bad." Shino didn't blindly chase after Zun, but stared at Hyojin and said, "Uchiha Inferno, if you don't want to die, then retreat to the side obediently." Hyojin stepped forward without saying a word and removed the long sword nailed to the wall. Seeing that Hyojin directly ignored him, Shino's expression was a little distorted, and he roared, "How dare you look down on me? Damn Uchiha. Today, I will let you see what real power is." With that, Shino shouted loudly. In an instant, a huge black chakra visible to the naked eye gushed out of his body. Under the effect of this black chakra, his already strong body became bigger, and the muscles on his body swelled even more, as if full of power. Ha ha ha. After laughing wildly for a while, Shino said, "See, this is real power. Feel ashamed, you idiots who only know how to rely on bloodline." Hyojin's eyes turned cold. At this time, the chakra on Shino's body was extremely explosive, giving people the feeling that they were facing a tailed beast. "I can't fight with him here, or my home will be destroyed." Considering that he was already so poor, if his home was destroyed, Hyojin really didn't have the money to rebuild it. Therefore, he raised the corner of his mouth and laughed at Shino, and began to ridicule. I heard from Shinichi that you are the most useless of all the members of the Akatsuki organization. It seems that he was right. Shino's face stiffened, and he was about to answer. Swoosh! In the whistling sound, Hyojin directly used the body teleportation technique to appear in front of Shino, and then stabbed his sword into Shino's chest. Shino was stunned for a moment, and then reacted, You? Hyojin continued to mock. You really are useless. Chapter 301. After the sneak attack succeeded, Hyojin immediately retreated to the side and silently watched Shino. Drip, drip, as Hyojin suddenly pulled out the long sword his hand from Shino's chest. A puff of blood turned into a blood mist under the pressure, splashing out and dripping to the ground. Shino's face twisted. He covered the wound with one hand and pointed at Hyojin with the other. How dare you? He didn't expect Hyojin to suddenly attack while he was talking, and he was a little confused. Hyojin waved his hand and shook off the blood hanging on the long sword. He didn't say a word and still stared at Shino silently. Because he was a researcher himself, Hyojin was very clear about the weakness of researchers. Although researchers could create many impossible things and obtain unimaginable and terrifying powers, they were limited by their shallow combat experience and mediocre combat talent. They were often unable to control the powerful abilities that they had just obtained. Perhaps they had 100 points of potential, but they could only unleash 40 to 50 points of combat power. For example, after completing the Kekkei Genkai ritual, Hiriko's strength sword, but even so, he couldn't take down Hyojin and Orochimaru, who couldn't fully use their strength. The same was true for Hyojin. When he first became the Jinchuriki of the Dragon Bloodline, because he couldn't control the strength of his attack, it caused the chakra to be overconsumed, and his body was eroded by the natural energy. Naturally, Shino was no exception. At this moment, although his strength had greatly increased, he still lacked combat experience. After all, his previous identity was only a spy and a herbalist. Although he had a lot of knowledge, he had little experience in fighting the strong. Of course, Hyojin didn't underestimate the enemy because of this. He knew that such a wound may be fatal for ordinary ninjas, but it was not necessarily the case for Shino. After all, although the body activation secret technique that Hyojin mastered was obtained from Orochimaru, Orochimaru's source was Shino in front of him. What's more, Shino probably also mastered the Chimera technique and some of the abilities of the Demon Morio. It was undoubtedly unrealistic to want to kill him with a light sword. Hiss, hiss, hiss. As expected, although Shino kept vomiting blood, the muscles around his chest wound were wriggling. In just a moment, the bloody wound recovered in a steam-like mist. Hyojin's face darkened, and without a word of nonsense, he turned around and ran. You want to escape? Shino's eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was filled with anger. Although the sword wound just now did not cause any substantial damage to his body, it had severely humiliated him, causing him, who was immersed in endless power, to become angry out of humiliation. Boom! 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 In his rage, Shino completely ignored the houses and walls. Like a war chariot, he charged forward and destroyed the houses along the way while chasing after Hyojin, causing a series of roars and smoke to fill the sky. Hyojin looked back at Shino, and at the same time he was speechless at the strength of Shino's body, and thought to himself, it seems that this guy's mind is also affected by the Demon Morio! In the beginning, Hyojin did not choose to use the Demon Morio as the source of chakra for the artificial tailed beast because of this. The evil of the Demon Morio was huge and pure, because it was the product of the witch removing its own evil side. Therefore, if one wanted to completely suppress this pure evil, it could not be achieved by technical means alone. One must have a strong will to defend oneself. Hyojin knew that he was just an ordinary person, and he could not resist the constant erosion of Morio, so he did not have the idea of attacking Morio. Seeing that Shino seemed to have lost his mind at the moment, he was extremely glad that he had made the right choice. In addition to rejoicing, Hyojin was quite puzzled. The movement on his side was so big, why there was no response from the village. Although there were many my ninjas along the way who noticed this side, without exception, all of them were Chunin and Jinin, and they could not stop the violent Shino at all. What happened in the village? Looking at the villagers who were evacuated around, Hyojin's face became more and more gloomy. As an Umbu directly under Naruto, he is very clear about the state of emergency in the village. Only when the war is approaching the village, or the situation on the night of the Nine Tails Rebellion, Naruto is likely to issue a state of emergency. Hyojin's thoughts turned quickly, and soon ruled out the possibility of other ninja villages invading Mai. Because even if other ninja villages launched a raid on the Land of Fire, it would take at least a week or two to break into the village. There is no need for the 3 generations to evacuate the villagers in the middle of the night. Such a hurry to evacuate the villagers undoubtedly means that the war is imminent. Then, who is the enemy? After thinking about it, Hyojin felt that the only possibility was that Uchiha had rebelled. Considering Shino's swaggering appearance in the village, Hyojin suspected that whether Uchiha really rebelled or was wrongly accused, the Akatsuki must have had a hand in tonight's matter. Thinking of this, Hyojin suddenly turned his head to look at Shino, and the black eyes in his eye sockets instantly turned scarlet. Outside the village, after Kakashi finished asking, he did not get a response for a long time. So he asked curiously, "Kuroto, what's wrong?" The Hyojin, who followed Kakashi and Jishue, was just a shadow clone of Jishue. He did not roll his eyes at all, so naturally, he could not answer Kakashi's question. He said hesitantly, maybe it's a trap. Maybe. Kakashi was confused. Shursui quickly said, "Captain, let me give it a try." Kakashi looked at Hyojin suspiciously, and then immediately said to Jishue, "Okay, then be careful." Jishue's figure flashed, and gently landed on the grass 4 or 5 meters away from the tied-up Naruto. Seeing this, Naruto twisted his body and shouted, but his mouth was also tied up, so Jishue could not understand what he was shouting. After using the Manjikyu Sharingan to observe the surroundings, and after confirming that there were no traps around Naruto, Jishue walked to Naruto's side and cut the rope that tied up Naruto with her kunai. Hiss! At this moment, the sound of detonation suddenly sounded on Naruto's body. Jishue did not care about her own safety, and quickly pulled off Naruto's coat that was covered with detonation talismans, and used her body to protect Naruto. Boom! 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 In an instant, there was a violent explosion in the forest. Kakashi was shocked, and the 3 Tomo in his left Sharingan spun, trying to find the enemy lying in ambush around. And in this chaos, a twisted whirlpool appeared out of thin air behind Hyojin, and then a figure came out of the whirlpool, put one hand on Hyojin's shoulder, and chuckled, "Byakugan in the way solved." Chapter 302. When Obsidian put his hand on Hyojin's shoulder, Hyojin's body immediately became distorted. Bang! With a low muffled sound, the distorted Hyojin suddenly turned into white smoke. Obsidian was startled. Shadow clone? Buzz at this time. A sharp bird cry suddenly sounded in the forest, and under the dazzling lightning, Kakashi quickly rushed towards Obsidian. Long lost Chidori. Looking at the lightning gathered in Kakashi's left hand, Obsidian sighed in his heart. Kakashi's speed is extremely fast, and in just a moment, he rushed in front of Obsidian, but Obsidian didn't dodge, making his heart beat uneasily. Swish! Kakashi's pupils shrank. The attack that should have been in the bag actually missed. He found that he actually penetrated the opponent's body. Before Kakashi could recover, Obsidian turned around and kicked Kakashi's waist heavily. With just one blow, Kakashi was sent flying. Obsidian's eyes were gloomy. "Useless guy, just like before. You can't stop anything. You can't save anything." Not far away, Jishue, whose back was injured by the detonation talisman, looked at Obsidian with a look of fear. He also saw the strange scene when Kakashi penetrated Obsidian's body just now. Even with the Manjikyu Sharingan, he couldn't figure out what was going on. Knowing that he may have encountered the most powerful and strange enemy in history, Jishui didn't dare to be careless. So he said to Naruto, who was a little confused, "I will deal with him. You run. Run in the direction of the village." Jishui knew that the village's reinforcements must be on the way. As long as Naruto ran in the direction of the village, he would soon meet a large group of reinforcements. Naruto didn't know that Jishui was the Umbu who secretly protected him, but he saw the scene of Jishui sacrificing himself to save him, so he nodded and ran. But this silly boy didn't know how to distinguish the direction. Although he ran very fast, he didn't run in the right direction. Jishui looked depressed, but it was too late to stop Naruto, so he stared at Obsidian and asked, "Who are you? Why did you attack Naruto? Who is the mastermind behind this?" Obsidian didn't answer, just glanced at Naruto, who was running away. This time, Obsidian's goal wasn't Naruto at all, so letting Naruto escape was also part of his plan, so he didn't have the slightest intention to chase after Naruto. Just then, a noise came from a distance. It seems that a large number of ninjas are coming here. Obsidian chuckled, and immediately his body began to distort and disappeared in front of Jishui. Facing Jishui, Obsidian has an instinctive fear, especially Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan, so he tried to avoid a head-on confrontation with Jishui. His trick again. Jishui frowned and thought, "Is this a Jinjutsu or a space-time ninjutsu?" Swish, swish, swish. At this time, a figure landed in the forest, led by Danzo. Danzo looked around, then locked his eyes on Jishui and asked, "Where's the attacker? Where's Naruto?" Jishui pointed to the direction where Naruto escaped. "The attacker just escaped. Naruto ran that way. I'm going to bring him back." "Stop." Danzo stopped Jishui, who was about to chase Naruto, and his eyes flashed as if he was planning something. Jishui asked, "Danzo-sama, what's wrong?" At this time, Kakashi also stood up with his hands on his waist. Unlike Jishui, who was worried about Naruto, Kakashi noticed the strange look on Danzo's face. At this time, the Shadow Guard captain who had already met with Danzo quietly came to Kakashi's side and whispered, "Someone assassinated Naruto-sama, and the suspect is likely to be Uchiha Jishui of your class 11. Kakashi was stunned and immediately shouted, "That's impossible." Kakashi's loud denial seemed to have made Danzo make up his mind. Without warning, he used the body flicker technique and appeared in front of Jishui, who had just let down his guard, and stabbed Jishui with his kunai. Jishui did not expect that Danzo would attack him at this critical moment, which was related to the safety of the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Coupled with the injury on his back, he was completely unprepared and had no time to avoid Danzo's attack, so he could only hurriedly use the Jinjutsu on Danzo. In an instant, Danzo controlled his body, as if he had lost consciousness. With Jishui's pupil power and his attainments in Jinjutsu, even if it was just a hasty Jinjutsu, he could instantly subdue Danzo. Just when Jishui wanted to figure out why Danzo attacked him, Danzo suddenly disappeared in front of him, and disappeared in a very strange way. There was no smoke when the shadow clone dissipated, nor was there a substitute when the substitute technique was used. It was as if he was erased by some kind of power. Jishui's expression froze. This is suddenly, without any warning, Danzo appeared behind Jishui, and the kunai in his hand stabbed Jishui's back. Jishui reluctantly turned his head and asked, "Double I?" Danzo coldly said, "Humph, you assassinated Naruto, betrayed the village, and you asked me why?" After that, Danzo didn't wait for Jishui to explain and reached out to grab the Manjikyu Sharingan in Jishui's eye socket that contained the Kotenjin eye technique. But just when Danzo's fingers were about to touch Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan, a figure flew to Danzo, and another figure picked up the injured Jishui. The two cooperated with each other, and in the blink of an eye, they rushed out of the crowd with Jishui. Kakashi, Mekkei. After seeing the two figures who rescued Jishui, Danzo gritted his teeth. This time, he missed the opportunity to obtain the Manjikyu Sharingan, which was so close to him causing him to be extremely annoyed. Without thinking, he ordered the root ninjas around him, team. 11 assassinated the Hokage and fled to escape punishment. In the name of the consulting elder, I declare them to be traitorous ninjas. Immediately hunt them down. Without the slightest hesitation, the root ninjas chased after Kakashi and the others without hesitation. While the 3 generations Naruto Shadow Guard captain stepped forward and said, Danzo-sama, Uchiha Jishue is only a suspect, but the crime has not been determined. Your arrangement will not. Danzo interrupted the Shadow Guard captain's words and said sternly, I will personally explain to Naruto. Now Uchiha Jishue is a dangerous person and must be eradicated immediately. Then, Danzo no longer paid attention to the Shadow Guard captain. His figure flashed, and he used the body flicker technique to chase in the direction where Kakashi and the others fled. Seeing Danzo leave with a murderous look, the Shadow Guard captain looked at each other. After a moment of silence, the Shadow Guard captain said, Let's go back to the village first. We must immediately report the situation here to Naruto-sama. Chapter 303. At the other end of the forest, 2 figures, one in front and one behind, were chasing each other in the starry night. They were bathing in the cold moonlight, rising and falling in the dense forest. Their speed was as fast as a ghost. Ordinary Jonin might not be able to reach this level. After a long time, the figure in front stopped. He stood quietly on the branch of a large tree, holding a mischievous 5 or 6-year-old child in his hand. He was panting slightly as he looked at the prey that was chasing after him. There is no doubt that this person is Orochimaru, who kidnapped Uchiha Sasuke from the Uchiha clan. In just a few short breaths, the second figure also fell. He stood on the crown of a big tree, staring at Orochimaru, who was holding Sasuke hostage. The one who chased after him all the way was naturally Itachi Uchiha. The crown of the tree where Itachi was standing was much higher than the branch where Orochimaru was standing, coupled with Itachi's back against the bright white moon. This caused Itachi's figure to overlap with the shadow of the moon. From Orochimaru's point of view, Itachi seemed to be standing in the bright moon, giving people a feeling of nobility and inviolability. Orochimaru frowned subconsciously. This feeling made Orochimaru very uncomfortable. But at the moment he has the advantage. This perfect body in front of him will soon be his. So he suppressed this unhappiness and said with a smile, It is undeniable that you are really courageous. You dare to chase after me alone. Do you think you could defeat me? Itachi pulled out a kunai and placed it in front of him. I want to try. Orochimaru grabbed Sasuke's neck, his long nails pierced into the flesh. Then he licked his lips and said with a smile, My conditions are very simple. As long as you are willing to hand over the Uchiha flames, I can even let both of you go. Humph, isn't it just coveting the Manjikyu Sharingan of Yanami-senpai? Itachi snorted disdainfully in his heart. Itachi had the same arrogance as the other Uchiha, but his arrogance was hidden even deeper. He helped the village to destroy the entire Uchiha clan that attempted to rebel. Although this was an action that he had no other choice, he had inadvertently placed himself in the position of an arbiter. He used his own values as the yardstick and made a judgment on the clansmen who disagreed with him. This was undoubtedly a kind of arrogance that stood out from the rest. Orochimaru's snake-like vertical pupils suddenly contracted. Just now, Itachi's brief display of emotion made Orochimaru realize an important piece of information, which was that Itachi actually knew Uchiha flames. In other words, there really was a genius girl called Uchiha Yin in the Uchiha clan. Therefore, Orochimaru emphasized, take the Uchiha flames in exchange. Otherwise, your beloved brother will become a pile of rotten meat in the belly of a snake. After saying that, Orochimaru's hand that was strangling Sasuke slowly tightened. Soon, Sasuke struggled in pain because of the difficulty of breathing. He struggled to hit Orochimaru's hand that was strangling his neck. but there was no effect at all. Looking at Sasuke's face was red, his feet were kicking, and he was getting weaker and weaker. Itachi felt as if he was the one being strangled. His heart was thumping in his chest, and his whole person was immersed in an indescribable feeling. For Itachi, family and friends were his reverse scale that he could not touch, and his younger brother Sasuke was under his reverse scale, the sensitive vital part that was protected. Not only could he not be touched, but he could not even let others see him. If Hyojin was here, he would definitely ridicule Orochimaru for seeking death. Orochimaru obviously also noticed this abnormality, but before he could react, Itachi flashed in front of him with a body flicker technique. Orochimaru's expression froze, and he was about to retreat. Orochimaru had already tested Itachi's speed limit, so he was sure that Itachi was definitely not this fast. The only explanation was that his perception was affected by the Genjutsu. Swish. After all, Orochimaru was one of the Sannin. Although he was affected by Itachi's Genjutsu, he still reacted in time and used the body flicker technique to retreat to another big tree. Your pupil power is so strong. At this time, Orochimaru put away his previous calm, and his face became serious. Not long ago, he was subdued by Hiriko's Genjutsu, so he knew that as long as the pupil power of the Sharingan was strong enough, even if it was only the Sharingan of the three Magatama, it would still be difficult for him to resist. He was not a mediocre person, and now he has realized that the undead reincarnation secret technique will cause his soul to become chaotic, which will lead to a decline in his resistance to Genjutsu. And this is also the reason why he tried so hard to get a body with the blood of Uchiha. If he also has the Sharingan, then his resistance to Genjutsu will increase a lot. In that case, this weakness was no longer a big deal. At this time, Itachi did not look at him, but said to a big tree behind him, "Sasuke, quickly run, I will hold him off." A child's voice came from behind the big tree in the distance. Orochimaru frowned and looked at Sasuke in his hand. Ga. However, as soon as his gaze swept over, Sasuke in his hand turned into countless crows and flew away. Substitution technique? Startled, Orochimaru said with an embarrassed expression, "You can actually complete the substitution technique under my nose. Itachi, I'm even more interested in you now." On Sasuke's side, he was running with his head down. Because of excessive nervousness and fear just now, he did not know the direction at all in Orochimaru's hand, so he was already dizzy. At this moment, he did not know which direction was the direction of the village, so he could only grit his teeth and run as far away as possible from Orochimaru. Bang! Sasuke, who was running wildly, suddenly bumped into something and fell to the ground. "Hey, so it's you, you arrogant guy." He rubbed his forehead, and just as he was trying to see what he had bumped into, a familiar voice came into his ears. So he said, "It's you. Why are you here?" The one who bumped into Sasuke was naturally Naruto, who had just been rescued by Jishui. He held the back of his head with both hands and said indifferently, "I don't know what happened, but I was brought here. By the way, why are you crying? Did someone bully you?" Sasuke was shocked and turned around as if he had been electrocuted. While wiping his crying face, he stubbornly said, "Nonsense. I didn't cry at all. It's just that the sky is too dark. You saw wrongly." Naruto went around to Sasuke, squatted down, and carefully stared at Sasuke's face. "You're obviously crying." Sasuke's face turned red. "No, don't tell anyone." Chapter 304. Naruto laughed and said, "You obviously cried. Why don't you let me say it? I didn't expect you to be such a sniveling brat." Sasuke quickly said, "As long as you promise not to say it, I can promise you anything. This is the friendship of the noble Uchiha clan. You have to think about it carefully. Promise me anything?" Naruto widened his eyes and stared at Sasuke. Sasuke took a small step back and said, The conditions you put forward can't be too much." Naruto fell into deep thought after hearing this. Seeing that Naruto was thinking so seriously, Sasuke felt a little uneasy. He was afraid that Naruto would put forward some conditions that he couldn't promise. Suddenly, Naruto seemed to think of something and said loudly, "I got it." "What?" Naruto pointed to Sasuke and said, "My condition is that you have to be friends with me." Sasuke was stunned for a moment and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "What kind of condition is this?" Naruto shouted. "Hey, aren't you a disciple of a famous family? You have to keep your word. You can't go back on your promise." Sasuke waved his hand and said, "Well, we are friends." After that, the two kids who were kidnapped tonight put their arms around each other's shoulders and walked towards the village, talking and laughing. In the village, Fuyue led a group of Uchiha elites and flew in the direction of the Naruto building. Although they were not close, the bright lights of the Naruto building in the distance and the noisy voices all made him have a bad feeling. It seems that the three generations have gathered a lot of ninjas. Just from the conversation of the ninjas in the distance, Fuyue can conclude that there are at least hundreds of ninjas gathered around the Naruto building at this moment. Maybe even more. In terms of numbers alone, the Uchiha clan obviously can't compare with the entire village. Therefore, Fuyue has made up his mind to go straight to the point when he sees the three generations Naruto. If the three generations don't intend to stop, then he can only use the Manjikyu Sharingan to preempt them. It didn't take long for the Uchiha ninjas to arrive outside the Naruto building. As expected, the Umbu guarding the periphery of the Naruto building did not let the Uchiha ninjas approach the Naruto building, but stopped them from a distance. Just when Fuyue was arguing with the Umbu on the periphery, the three generations Naruto, Zhuan Shaochun, and Mito Hamura led a group of Maijonin. While secretly brewing the Manjikyu Sharingan Jutsu, Fuyue saluted to the three generations Naruto and asked loudly, "Naruto-sama, what happened? Why didn't you inform the police force when the village entered a state of emergency?" Seeing that Fuyue's first sentence was not an explanation, but an unkind tone of questioning, the three generations once again felt that his guess was probably correct, so he took off the pipe in his mouth and said, "Not long ago, Naruto was kidnapped by an unknown person, and I was also assassinated by a very strong ninja with Sharingan." "What?" Fuyue was taken aback. This is completely different from what he expected. The three generations continued. First, the other party deliberately kidnapped Naruto and lured Jishue, who is responsible for protecting Naruto, out of the village, leaving him without any witnesses except for a few teammates around him, so that we can't find him immediately to confront him. Then the other party pretended to be Jishue to assassinate me, trying to provoke a misunderstanding between the village and the Uchiha clan, so that we can kill each other. During the period of issuing a state of emergency and summoning all the Jonin in the village, the three generations and the two consultants have guessed the ins and outs of the matter. Of course, the premise of all this is that the three generations did not believe in Jishue. Fuyue's face was gloomy when he heard this. He didn't expect that so many things would happen on an ordinary night, and the intention of the person behind all of this made him shudder. If the three generations and Naruto fell into the trap, then a war will break out at this moment, and at that time, either the Uchiha clan will be completely destroyed or the upper class of the village will be wiped out. And no matter which one it is, it will be disastrous for Uchiha and Mai. The three generations of Naruto patted Fuyue's shoulder and comforted him. "I have already sent someone to pick up Squad 11. They will definitely bring Naruto back safely." Fugako had no choice but to nod as well. Boom! Suddenly, a deafening loud noise came from afar, followed by the tremors of the ground, as if some behemoth was ravaging the village. Did the Nine Tails go berserk again? The three generations' face darkened. This feeling reminded him of the Nine Tails rebellion a few years ago. When everyone looked up, they found that the behemoth that was wreaking havoc in the village was not the familiar Nine Tails, but a purple-black dragon-shaped creature with many claws. "What is that? Hey! This kind of chakra is too exaggerated. Damn it, my house is over there." The ninjas at the scene were suddenly in an uproar. No one could turn a blind eye to the monster that was wreaking havoc in their home. At this time, A chunin with a pale face rushed over from the direction of the monster and reported to the three generations. Naruto-sama, the captain of the police force, is resisting the monster alone. Please send someone to support him immediately. The captain of the police force? The three generations were stunned and immediately looked at Fuyue. Fuyue was also dumbfounded. The police force is completely controlled by the Uchiha clan, and several captains are following behind him at this moment. There is no other captain. What's more, such a monster is not something that a Jonin can resist, as long as there is no Manjikyu Sharingan. Even the most experienced elite Jonin may not be able to resist that monster alone. The injured Chunin saluted Fuyue at this time. Patriarch Fuyue, this time it is really thanks to the captain. Otherwise, I am afraid that none of our teams nearby would have survived. So, please be sure to convey this gratitude for me. Fuyue nodded awkwardly. The three generations Naruto jumped to the roof of a building and shouted, "Let's go drive that monster out of the village." Yes, a group of my ninjas, including the ninjas of the Uchiha clan, all roared in agreement. The sudden appearance of the monster further indicated that there are traces of a third party interfering in tonight's matter. So whether it is my side or Uchiha's side, at this moment, there are some traces of a common enemy. In an instant, under the personal leadership of the three generations Naruto, a large number of ninjas rushed towards the place where the monster was wreaking havoc. On the tall building on the other side of the village, Obsidian walked out of the whirlpool, looked at the monster wreaking havoc in the village, and said speechlessly, "This is a little different from what I thought." Chapter 305. On the devastated street, Hyojin flipped and moved. The long sword in his hand glowed with a cold light, and he kept slashing. At this time, Shino, who had completely transformed into a tailed beast, did not look like a human at all. His whole body had turned into a huge, multi-headed dragon monster, and his body was also filled with a corrosive black chakra. This black chakra seemed to be spiritual, as if it could hunt on its own. Hyojin had seen it swallow the my ninjas who were caught off guard more than once. After a while, what was spat out was only a mass of bloody and unrecognizable rotten meat. "Everyone retreat!" Hyojin, who was dodging, shouted. In this situation, Chunin and Genin were almost useless. Even if they charged at Shino without fear of death, it would only increase casualties. After listening to Hyojin's words, the my ninjas around hesitated for a while, and then retreated one after another. They also knew very well that this level of fighting was no longer something they could intervene in. Fortunately, the villagers in the nearby blocks had been completely evacuated. If it was just a fight, Hyojin was not afraid of Shino-S raging Morio's Jinchuriki. Whoosh, after using the teleportation technique again and avoiding the attack of a dragon head of Shino, Hyojin stood on the broken wall, panting while analyzing the situation in front of him. With Shino-S complete transformation into a tailed beast, no matter what he was held back by 3 generations ago, at this moment, he had to prioritize the things here. So Hyojin knew that as long as he was entangled for a while, he would be able to retreat successfully. At this time, one of Shino-S dragon heads approached in front of Hyojin, opened its big mouth, and said in a muffled voice, "Uchiha Flame, did you see that? This is my power." Hyojin's eyes darkened, and he thought to himself, "Hey, at this point, Shino-S consciousness still dominates the body? How'd this guy do it?" For the human pillar strength, the complete transformation into a tailed beast often meant losing oneself. Except for a few perfect Jinchuriki that can reach an understanding with the tailed beast in their body, other Jinchuriki will be extremely restrained. Unless it is absolutely necessary, they will not release the power of the tailed beast. Because once they lost control, not only would their own consciousness be devoured by the tailed beast, the berserk-tailed beast would also become a monster weapon with its own consciousness, turning the entire village upside down. Oh right, there's still this move. Shino suddenly smiled again, and immediately, the black chakra on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Crash, crash! As the black chakra on Shino's body surged, The surrounding soil and bricks seemed to come alive, and they quickly assembled into terracotta soldiers one after another. Hyojin's expression turned cold, and he quickly formed a seal with his hands. Fire escape, grand fire annihilation. Who, in an instant, a flame that lit up half the sky fiercely pounced towards Shino. However, when the flame burned Shino's body, the black chakra on his body greatly offset the power of Hyojin's fire escape ninjutsu. In just a few breaths, the flame completely disappeared. This, Hyojin spat lightly. From the scene just now, Hyojin discovered that the black chakra that enveloped Shino could not only hunt on its own, but could also form a protective layer to protect Shino's body. Without the dragon vein around him, Hyojin's chakra amount suddenly returned to its original state. In addition, the development of this fire release clone is not as good as the water release clone. So the chakra amount of this fire release clone is slightly lower than his Een release and water release clone. What's more, four-tailed beast-level monsters, the effect of ordinary ninjutsu is very limited. Unless it's like Madara Uchiha, who can casually use a B-level ninjutsu. Otherwise, a whole team of ninjas with tacit understanding must perform joint ninjutsu to suppress tailed beast-level monsters for a short time. These terracotta soldiers' puppets, I'm afraid 3 generations won't be able to do anything. Seeing the terracotta soldiers' puppets scattered around, Hyojin's face was gloomy. Kuroto has seen these terracotta army puppets when he was in the land of demons. As long as the chakra supply of Morio's Jinchuriki doesn't stop, these terracotta army puppets are almost immortal. So as long as Shino stays in the village for a while, then with a huge number of terracotta army puppets in front of him, the civilians in the village will suffer. No, even ordinary ninjas may not be spared. Then let's finish this quickly. Hyojin made up his mind and put the long sword in the scabbard around his waist and walked slowly toward Shino. Shino was a little surprised and smiled. In the face of absolute strength, you finally gave up, Hyojin said coldly. No, I decided to kill you once and for all. You damn Uchiha. Shino suddenly became furious, and all the dragon heads cursed at the same time. The muffled voice spread far away, causing a group of my ninjas who were guarding the periphery to look at each other. At the same time, they also learned that the one who resisted the monster alone was a member of the Uchiha family. After the roar, Shino directly drove the dragon head to Hyojin regardless of anything else. Looking at the dragon head that was rushing towards him with a bloody mouth, the 3 Magatama Sharingan and Hyojin's eye sockets instantly turned into a complex pattern intertwined with a diamond and a triangle. Boom! In an instant, the rumbling of a heavy object hitting the ground resounded. Feeling that he had swallowed Hyojin, Shino laughed wildly. So what if you are from a ninja world? So what if you have the pupil technique, Kekiai limit? You are still swallowed by me. But as soon as his voice fell, Shino suddenly noticed that something was wrong. It seemed that something was making a scene in his stomach. Unfortunately, he didn't have the Byakugan, so he couldn't see his body, so he couldn't figure out what was happening in his stomach for a while. In Shino's stomach, Hyojin's body was protected by a golden phantom with only a few ribs. There is no doubt that at the moment when he was swallowed by Shino, he seized the time and activated Susanoo, but because of chakra, he only activated the incomplete Susanoo. Looking at the flesh and blood in Shino's body, Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth. I want you to understand that not everything can be swallowed into your stomach. Immediately, he mobilized the golden flame of Susanoo and began to burn Shino's body from the inside. Although the golden flame of Hyojin's Susanoo was not as good as the black flame of Itachi's Amaterasu, which could easily subdue the perfect Jinchuriki, his golden flame also had a special ability, which was to burn chakra. Even if it was a tailed beast, if it was unprepared and let these golden flames burn in its stomach, it couldn't bear it. Chapter 306. Ah! Shino wailed as he rolled on the ground. With his size, even an ordinary step would cause the earth to tremble, let alone rolling back and forth on the ground. Therefore, in just a moment, The nearby streets were all gone, leaving only piles of rubble. So effective. Hyojin was also a little surprised. At this time, he felt that he seemed to have underestimated the power of the golden flames on the Susanoo. Since the effect was so good, Hyojin naturally wouldn't stop. So he increased his strength and drove the golden flames with all his strength, turning Shino's huge abdomen into a sea of fire. After a while, Shino's wailing became smaller and smaller, and his body gradually stopped twisting. Seeing that the time has come, Hyojin immediately used the incomplete Susanoo to cut open a huge dragon head. Then he withdrew the Susanoo and jumped out of the hole. As soon as Hyojin came out, he heard the rumbling sound of the terracotta puppets collapsing. At the same time, Shino's huge body also slowly shrank, gradually returning to his original appearance. But at this moment, he is unconscious, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. It seems that I played a bit too much. Hyojin smiled softly. At this time, a crow landed on his shoulder and cawed. This crow is specially used by Hyojin as a sentry. It fell from the sky, indicating that a large number of ninjas are coming here. So, Hyojin glanced at Shino, who fell on the ground, weighed his options, and finally decided not to take Shino away. Although this is an opportunity to obtain the Chimera technique, Hyojin feels that Shino is definitely not the only one who did this. If he guessed correctly, Hiriko, who is in the same group as Shino, should also be somewhere in the village. Obsidian might even be watching from somewhere. If he took Shino away at this time, he might encounter unexpected trouble. Hyojin is very clear about the limits of his combat power, and his golden Susanoo has long been identified by the village as the evidence of Amatsukumi's Homusubi. So in a situation where his hands and feet are tied, he is definitely not a match for Hiriko and Obsidian. After making up his mind, Kuroto let the ninja crow on his shoulder fly into the air again to monitor the surroundings. Then, he turned into a shadow and disappeared on the spot, on the roof of a building in the distance. Hiriko crossed his arms in front of his chest and watched as Shino, who had completely transformed into a tailed beast, gradually shrunk and disappeared. He couldn't help but curl his lips and say, "Humph, what a waste." Zetsu covered his face with his hands and said helplessly, "Such a good plan was ruined by that idiot Shino." Once there is a trace of a third party's interference, with the experience of the 3 generations Naruto, he will immediately know that tonight's matter is a complete trap. It can be said that with Shino's rampage, the originally tense atmosphere between the village and Uchiha immediately quieted down. Hiriko said, "Since the plan has failed, I will go and rescue him." Looking into the distance in despair, Black's eyes flickered for a while, and then immediately smiled and said, "I'll leave it to you." Although Shino is not a big figure in Akatsuki, he still knows a lot of information about the organization. If he falls into the hands of Mai, then a lot of information about Akatsuki will inevitably be leaked. No matter if it was the leader Pain on the surface or the leader Obito in the dark, neither of them could accept this. At this time, Hiriko's figure flickered, and like a breeze, he quietly disappeared from the roof. As soon as Hiriko left, Obsidian walked out of a twisting vortex and said in a deep voice, "His speed is faster than I expected." Zetsu replied, "Yeah, it is indeed faster than I expected." Obsidian pondered for a moment and said, "This guy thinks of himself as Pain's direct subordinate. We must find a way to win him over to our hands." The one who really convinced Pain to support Hiriko's Kekkei Genkai fusion plan is actually Obsidian, who is hiding behind the scenes. But Hiriko doesn't know about the existence of Obsidian. For him, the leader of Akatsuki, known as the Eye of God, still values him and mobilizes the entire organization to support his plan. Therefore, Hiriko, who is eager to be recognized by others, has long regarded himself as a hardcore supporter of Pain. This is also the reason why Hiriko was able to suppress his desire for revenge against Mai and disguise himself as Jishuei to assassinate 3 generations Naruto, because this is Pain's request. Otherwise, Hiriko, who has always been unwilling to be left out of the limelight, After completing the Kekkei Genkai fusion ceremony, it is impossible for him to keep a low profile. Not long after, a large number of ninjas led by 3 generations arrived at the scene. Looking at the originally bustling street turned into a pile of rubble, the faces of my ninjas were filled with anger. At this time, an Umbu found the unconscious Shino lying on the ground and said, "Naruto-sama, this person seems to be a member of Akatsuki." Although no substantive military cooperation was reached in the previous Gakage assembly, the 5 great shinobi villages still unanimously agreed to share information with each other regarding organizations that pose a great threat to Amatsukami and Akatsuki. Therefore, the 5 great shinobi villages are aware of the information of some of the regular members of Akatsuki. After all, Akatsuki doesn't wear masks. As soon as he heard that Shino is a member of Akatsuki, the expression of 3 generations immediately became solemn. He walked toward Shino and looked at him for a moment before asking, "Is he Shino, the spy wanted by Kyumo before?" "Yes, that's him." The Umbu nodded immediately. Then, Sandame turned his gaze to the perceptual class monitor. Without needing 3 generations Naruto to urge, the perception class monitor quickly walked toward Shino and pointed his finger at Shino's eyebrows. After sensing for a moment, he said with a serious expression, "Is that monster just now?" The brows of 3 generations wrinkled even more tightly. At this time, he has already thought of the daughter of the witch of the land of demons who came to the village a few days ago. 3 generations only learned about the attack on the land of demons after Ziwen arrived in Mai. Originally, he was planning to immediately send an elite team to investigate what happened in the land of demons, but the 2 anonymous letters completely disrupted his plans, causing the investigation to be delayed. Is that monster just now the one that was sealed by the Miko a few years ago? Thinking of this, 3 generations suddenly understood that Shino in front of him has probably become the Jinchuriki of that Miko. But what puzzled him is who dealt with Shino who completely transformed into a tailed beast so quickly. So, 3 generations squeezed out a smile and said to Fuyue on the side, "I want to see the captain of the police force." Chapter 307. As soon as the 3 generations finished speaking, not only the Mai Umbu and Jonin, but even the Uchiha elites who followed Fuyue all looked at Fuyue, waiting for his answer. Obviously, everyone is very curious about the captain of the police force, who can quickly defeat Shino, who has completely transformed into a tailed beast. Fuyue suddenly fell into an extremely awkward situation, because like everyone else, he is also confused at the moment. If it weren't for the fact that everyone heard Shino's roar of "Damn, Uchi on the way here," he would have even suspected that someone else is pretending to be an Uchiha clansman. After all, as a member of the Akatsuki organization, Shino would never mistake a Sharingan. So in Fuyue's view, although the person who fought with Shino here is not a captain of the police force, it is definitely an Uchiha clansman who possesses Sharingan. Who could it be? For a moment, Fugaku's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. As far as he knows, the only 2 people in the Uchiha clan who have such ability are himself and Homasubi, who possess the Manjiki Sharingan, and obviously, the one who fought here just now wasn't one of them. Seeing Fuyue's silence, the faces of the 3 generations sank. Although the Konoha police force is controlled by the Uchiha clan, Sandame Hokage still knows all the division captains of the Konoha police force, and it is precisely because of this that he is even more curious about the identity of the person who fought with Shino just now. Are there other forces hidden within the Uchiha clan? Is there a branch of the police force that the village doesn't know about? Soon, such a thought emerged in the minds of the 3 generations. At the thought of this possibility, the 3 generations was even more eager to reveal the identity of the mysterious person who fought with Shino, so he shouted loudly, "Kaichi!" Kaichi Yamanaka stood up when he heard the voice. 3 generations ordered, "Read his memories. I want to know everything in his mind." "Yes." Kaichi Yamanaka responded and leaped to Shino's side. The Yamanaka clan was the Mai clan of secret arts. They specialized in the secret arts of the mind and soul. In terms of interrogating information and reading memories, they had superb skills that were beyond the reach of others. But just as Kaichi Yamanaka squatted down and was about to read Shino's memories, many feathers suddenly fell from the sky. Why are there so many feathers? Look, the ends of these feathers are burning. The moment the Mai ninjas discovered the feather, they realized that something was wrong, and without the need for others to remind them, they launched emergency countermeasures. Boom, boom, boom. These burning feathers, like the detonation talismans, produced a series of explosive sounds. Amidst the violent explosion, it was as if the entire earth was shaking. Thick smoke billowed up from the ruins and quickly spread in all directions. At this time, a huge shadow passed through the smoke and dust above the ruins. This huge shadow that swept through the smoke and dust was Hiriko's fusion with several psychic beasts, using the Chimera technique as the foundation. Not only could it fly, but each of its feathers was comparable to a powerful detonation talisman. While fusing with the psychic beasts, Hiriko crossed his arms over his chest with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. Compared to pretending to be an Uchiha clansman to assassinate Naruto, or provoking internal strife in the Mai clan, he prefers simple and direct revenge against the Mai clan. Just like now, he wants to completely destroy this place that is full of painful memories for him. Taking advantage of the smoke and dust caused by the explosion, Hiriko jumped down from the air and landed firmly beside Shino. Because Shino is an important source of information, when he was attacked just now, one of the Mai Umbu used Earth Release ninjutsu on the area where Shino was located, creating several earth walls to protect him. Therefore, although the explosion just now was fierce, it did not hurt the unconscious Shino. Coming to the front of the earth wall, Hiriko reached out and gently pressed on it. As he activated Hell Release, the Earth Attribute Chakra that was maintaining the shape of the earth wall was quickly absorbed, and with a cracking sound, the originally sturdy earth wall immediately shattered into a pile of sand and stones. At this time, one of the Umbu who was lying in ambush nearby saw the opportunity, activated the body flicker technique, and rushed towards Hiriko. The steel-forged kunai in his hand fiercely stabbed towards Hiriko's waist. Clang! The expected blood splatter did not happen. Instead, there was a sound of metal clashing. The Umbu whose sneak attacked Hiriko felt his entire arm holding the kunai go numb, as if he had stabbed not a person but a lump of steel. Hiriko snorted lightly, immediately turned around, and directly stabbed his steel-like arm into the Umbu's chest, then pulled it out with a burst of blood. Although the ruins were still filled with smoke and dust, almost all of the people present were Jonin-level experts. So everyone quickly noticed the battle between Hiriko and the Umbu and knew that an enemy had broken into the ruins. Immediately, a ninja used wind release to blow away the smoke and dust in the ruins. When the smoke and dust dissipated, Hiriko had already arrived beside Shino. The three generations looked at Hiriko, who was not far away, and asked with uncertainty, "You are Hiriko?" Because of Shino's rage, Obsidian's plan was ruined. So when Hiriko came to rescue Shino this time, he did not disguise himself and was completely in his original appearance. However, after completing the Kekai Genkai fusion ceremony, both his appearance and physique had undergone significant changes. He was very different from the Hiriko Saname-sama's impression of him, so Saname-sama couldn't be sure whether the person in front of him was Hiriko or not. Listening to the uncertain tone of the three generations, a trace of anger flashed on Hiriko's face, and he gritted his teeth and said, "What's wrong? Can't you even remember my appearance? Naruto-sama?" Looking at Hiriko's hateful eyes, the three generations immediately thought of the attacker who tried to assassinate him. So he said, "The one who attacked me just now was you." Mito Hamura, who was on the side, said, "How is this possible? The attacker clearly had Sharingan." Sharingan? After smiling, Hiriko activated the Sharingan and said, This pair of Sharingan was taken from a guy named Uchiha Ki, and it's quite good to use. As Hiriko activated the Sharingan, all the Uchiha clansmen present were furious, and the Patriarch Fuyue even said with killing intent, "Atone for your crimes." After saying that, Fugaku took the initiative to pounce over. Hiriko lifted the unconscious Shino into the air and threw him on the back of the fusion spirit beast. Then, he grinned and faced Fuyue excitedly. Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, the two figures were entangled in the ruins like two ghosts. Only the sparks generated from the collision from time to time allowed people to determine their exact location. Chapter 308. As time passed, both of them felt that the other party was not easy to deal with. How can a speed be so fast? The inside of the Manjikyu Sharingan and the three Magatama Sharingan are worlds apart. Even if the Manjikyu Sharingan is only in the three Magatama state, the inside of the Manjikyu Sharingan is not comparable to that of an ordinary three Magatama Sharingan. But Fuyue found that even if he fully stimulated the three Magatama Sharingan in his eye socket, he could only barely capture Hiriko's figure, and was unable to predict Hiriko's movements. This is obviously far beyond his expectations. He can actually keep up with my speed. Is his insight really that strong? Like Fuyue, Hiriko was also very surprised at the moment. In the intelligence of the Akatsuki organization, the Uchiha Patriarch didn't have anything special about him. On the contrary, the Akatsuki organization's evaluation of the Uchiha Patriarch Fuyue is very low, as if Fuyue is a mediocre person. And when Hiriko was in the Konoha village, Fuyue didn't have any outstanding performance, so he didn't put Fuyue in his eyes from the very beginning. But after the fight, he found that Fuyue is much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, just like the Uchiha Patriarch during the Kekkei Genkai ceremony. Not far away, looking at the two people fighting, Zhuan Shaochun frowned and said, "In my impression, Hiriko isn't like this at all. How did he become like this?" Midokado Hamura also raised his doubts, and he even transplanted two Sharingan. In fact, Mai has also carried out many human experiments in secret, the most famous of which is undoubtedly the experiment of transplanting Hashirama cells, and the village has also secretly carried out the transplantation of Sharingan. However, the results weren't ideal. Although the Sharingan is a powerful weapon, it is too unfriendly for non-Uchiha shinobi. Even someone as talented as Kakashi would find it difficult to bear the burden of one Sharingan. So if two Sharingan are transplanted at the same time, not only will the Sharingan not improve the shinobi's combat power, it will also become a heavy burden to the shinobi. Because of this, although there are countless people who covet the Uchiha clan Sharingan, there are only a few who can really obtain it and turn it into their own power. 3 generations pondered for a long time and said, perhaps it has something to do with his human experiments. As far as I know, before he defected, he was researching a forbidden technique that can plunder other people's Kekkei Genkai. Zhuan Shaochun and Midokado Hamura looked at each other. Obviously, judging from Hiriko's current performance, the forbidden jutsu that he researched before his defection has obviously succeeded, and this undoubtedly means that a bloody storm is coming for the shinobi world. After a pause, 3 generations continued. Combined with the Sharingan, I'm afraid he has 3 Kekkei Genkai. After a short pause, 3 generations continued. Coupled with the Sharingan, I'm afraid he has 3 Kekkei Genkai. At this moment, the situation in the field changed. Hiriko didn't dodge and directly took Fuyue's kunai head-on, clapped his hands, and shouted, "Mist release! Mist Ghost Dragon!" In an instant, large black cumulonimbus clouds rose from the sky. Thick bolts of lightning lit up the dark night sky, causing it to flicker between bright and dark. Fugaku knew something was wrong and immediately retreated far away. He can now conclude that he won't be able to take down Hiriko without using the Manjikyu Sharingan. At the same time, Kuroto also faintly felt that Hiriko's attack and defense movements, the rhythm of the battle, and even the use of the Sharingan are full of inexplicable strangeness. It gives the feeling that he doesn't have much high-end combat experience. If not for this, Fuyue, who can't use the Manjikyu Sharingan, may not have been able to hold on for so long. It seems that he still has Steel Release Kekiai Genkai and Mist Release Kekiai Genkai. After shaking his head, 3 Generations said, Hiriko now has 5 Kekiai Genkai. I'm afraid Fuyue is not his opponent. Let's attack together. Zhuan Xiaochun and Mito Hamura nodded at the same time. At this time, standing under the dark clouds, Hiriko opened his arms and said, Naruto-sama, regret your decision. 3 Generations Naruto summoned his summer demon ape and said in a deep voice, Hiriko, don't repeat your mistakes. It's not too late to turn back now. Repeat my mistakes. Hiriko's face suddenly distorted, and he roared, Why is everything I do wrong? Is it because I am unwilling to be ordinary? Seemingly affected by Hiriko's emotions, the thunderclouds in the sky also became more violent, and the lightning in the thunderclouds became thicker and more frequent. Standing under the thunderclouds, Hiriko glanced at the crowd of my ninjas around him and said fiercely, Today, I will let you know who is wrong. After saying that, Hiriko waved his hand, and countless lightning bolts poured out from the thunderclouds and bombarded the ground. The speed of the lightning was extremely fast, and in just a blink of an eye, a large number of ninjas were hit by Hiriko's mist release ninjutsu and fell to the ground in disorder. At this moment, 3 Generations Naruto swept his Vajra Wishful Staff towards Hiriko. Hiriko didn't dodge because he has the Steel Release Kekiai Genkai, and said with a smile, Any of your attacks are useless against me. Bang! Before his voice fell, Hiriko was swept away by the tremendous force of 3 Generations Naruto's Vajra Wishful Staff. Damn it! Hiriko crawled up from the ground, a little angry out of shame. 3 Generations Naruto's attack just now actually didn't do anything to him. He can even be said to be unscathed, but being sent flying so easily made him feel like he lost face, and the last thing he wants is to lose face in front of 3 Generations Naruto. But just as Hiriko was about to fight back, several iron chains buried under the ruins under his feet were instantly pulled up and wrapped around his feet, temporarily restricting his movements. At the same time, Mito Kimonhamura held a scroll that was half the height of a person and moved behind Hiriko, shaking the scroll while making hand seals, seemingly trying to cast some kind of sealing technique. After completing the Kekiai Genkai fusion ceremony, Hiriko's perception has also improved a lot. When he felt the fluctuation of chakra behind him, a great sense of uneasiness suddenly surged in his heart. He knew that if he didn't react immediately, he would definitely die. Therefore, he no longer hesitated and immediately cut off his 2 legs, breaking free from the shackles of the iron chains. And then, with his palms on the ground, he jumped high and landed on the body of the fusion spirit beast that has been hovering over the ruins. Run! After landing on the body of the fusion spirit beast, Hiriko hurriedly gave the order to retreat. He didn't expect that a moment of carelessness would instantly turn the situation around. Chapter 309. Outside the My Village, Guy was carrying the unconscious Jishue on his back and following behind Kakashi. Behind them was a large number of root ninjas led by Danzo. How did things become like this? Guy was confused. I don't know either. Kakashi's face was gloomy. Although he didn't know the whole story, he was keenly aware that his team, 11, might have fallen into some kind of conspiracy. Where is Kuroto? Where is he? Guy asked. Hearing this, Kakashi's face became even more gloomy. He already knew that the Hygenin team, 11 today, was just a shadow clone, and judging from Jishue's expression when the shadow clone was attacked, it seemed that Jishue also knew about it. But this was not the most important thing right now. The most important thing right now was whether the assassination of 3 Generations Naruto was true or not. So he immediately asked Guy, is it true that Naruto-sama was assassinated? Guy immediately shook his head. No, when I went to report, I saw Naruto-sama with my own eyes. There is no doubt that after the Shadow Squad caught up with Danzo, they only told Danzo about the assassination of 3 generations. So even Guy, who was with them, didn't know about the assassination of 3 generations. Kakashi glanced at the pursuers behind him again, frowned, and said to Guy, "If this goes on, we will be caught by them sooner or later. Then what should we do?" Guy asked. After pondering for a moment, Kakashi suggested, "I'll go hold them off. You take Jishui to rest house number 4 first. I'll meet you there after I get away." Because the Umbu squad was not allowed to go in and out of the hotel when they were carrying out secret missions, almost every Umbu squad had their own secret rest house outside the village. Guy was a little hesitant. "You alone?" Before Guy could finish, Kakashi waved his hand and said, "It's decided. Jishui's injury can't be delayed any longer. We met at resting room 4. With that, Kakashi stopped and quickly formed a seal on the tree branch. In an instant, thousands of birds in the forest sang in unison. Looking at Kakashi's determined back, Guy no longer hesitated. He carried the injured Jishui and rushed to resting house number 4. It didn't take long for Guy to arrive at rest house number 4. The so-called resting area number 4 was actually a cave that had been simply modified. Inside the cave, Guy bandaged Jishui's wounds. The wound on Jishui's body was made up of 2 parts. One part was caused by the detonator. His entire back was almost blown up. Although this part of the injury looked scary, it was not too serious for a ninja as long as it was treated in time. The other part was caused by the kunai that Danzo had stabbed into Jishui's back. The kunai stab was not a big deal, but the problem was that Danzo had dipped the kunai in poison, which was why Jishui was in a coma. After giving the antidote to Jishui, Guy waited anxiously in the cave for Kakashi. Fortunately, this kind of suffering did not last long. Kakashi soon arrived at resting room number 4. While panting, he said, "I used a shadow clone to lure them away." Guy also told Kakashi about Jishui's injury in detail. In the end, he emphasized, "I'm not sure if the standard antidote distributed by our Umbu will work." Kakashi hesitated for a while and immediately said, "Let's go back and find Naruto-sama." Guy said, "But what about Lord Danzo?" Kakashi said, "We are the Umbu, which is directly under Naruto-sama. Danzo has no right to give us any orders, nor does he have the right to torture us privately." This time, he suddenly attacked Jishui. "I think he is coveting." Halfway through his sentence, Kakashi stopped. No matter what, Danzo was still the village's advisory elder. Therefore, in the absence of conclusive evidence, Kakashi did not want to speculate about Danzo's intentions with the greatest malice. In the village, looking at Hiriko escaping through the air with the help of his summoned beast, whether it was 3 generations or Fuyue, all of their faces were ashen. Hiriko's action at the last moment was very decisive. He cut off his legs that were bound by the chains, used his palms to support himself, and jumped on top of the summoned beast. The whole process was done without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Even the seasoned 3 generations had no way to stop him from escaping. Hiriko's strength was reflected vividly in the battle with Fuyue. In a one-on-one fight, there was almost no way to deal with Hiriko. To deal with him, at least a team with tacit understanding would be needed to set up a trap in advance, and then use a sealing technique to deal with Hiriko. Therefore, what happened just now could be said to be the best opportunity to deal with Hiriko. If they could deal with Hiriko just now, not only would they be able to remove a big hidden danger for Mai, but they would also be able to get their hands on Hiriko's bloodline limit technique, as well as the internal information of the Akatsuki organization. Once they missed this opportunity, it would be extremely difficult to capture Hiriko the next time they want to capture him. At this time, Zhuan Xiaochun walked to the side of 3 generations and said, "Hizen, this Hiriko is too dangerous. We should immediately notify the other great shinobi villages and join forces to eliminate him." Mido Kato Hamura also walked over with a scroll in his hand. Among the Kekkei Genkai that he plundered, there is a mist release Kekkei Genkai, which means that the last attack on the Raikage and the kidnapping of the mist release ninja was Akatsuki, not Amitsukami. Hearing the names Akatsuki and Amitsukami, 3 generations couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. At this time, the Shadow Squad finally rushed back to the village and reported to 3 generations about the Danzo's brazen attack on Jishui. 3 generations frowned and immediately ordered, "Go call the Danzo back, and send the Umbu to pick up Team 11 inside the secret laboratory." Hyojin slowly lowered his hand that was covering his right eye and said, "Sure enough, Hiriko is nearby, but isn't this guy too arrogant? He didn't even try to dodge the attack of 3 generations." Hyojin, who left early, secretly monitored everything that happened in the field through the crow doppelganger flying in the air. So he saw Hiriko's dazzling appearance, as well as the scene of him falling into a disadvantageous position and almost losing his life. Hyojin muttered to himself, "Team 11 didn't show up from the beginning to the end. What exactly happened?" Because he rushed back in a hurry and didn't meet Jishui, Hyojin didn't know what happened to Team 11. Therefore, due to the lack of information, he couldn't analyze what exactly happened to Team 11. "Forget it. Let's wait for my main body to come back first." After saying that, Hyojin's spirit body escaped from the fired doppelganger and flew into the air. Chapter 310. Because Kuroto's soul returned to the body of the true body, he has the support of instinct, plus he doesn't need to distinguish the direction all the time, so his speed is much faster than before. Just before dawn, Kuroto's soul flew back to the land of demons and returned to his true body. Coming out of the tree hole, Hyojin stretched his waist. The seal around the tree hole is intact, which means that during the time Hyojin's soul was not here, no one or animal came close to the tree hole, so Hyojin was relieved. At this time, the big boar came over and circled around Kuroto in a flattering manner. Hyojin jumped on the back of the big wild boar, patted its head, and said with a smile, "Not bad. This time I will give you a merit." Although this wild boar hasn't been with Hyojin for a long time, it has always come in handy at critical moments. After releasing the summoning technique and sending the big wild boar away, Hyojin didn't delay and immediately entered the Tenseigan chakra mode and flew towards Mai's direction. A few days later, Hyojin returned to the village. Because he doesn't know what happened to Class 11 and whether Jishui's shadow clone was exposed, Hyojin didn't enter the village openly, but quietly sneaked back home. The courtyard door that was kicked away by Shino has been repaired, and Belle, Ziyun, and ASU are sitting around eating Chinese food. Seeing Hyojin come back, Belle quickly greeted him. "Hyojin, you are finally back." Ziyun also rushed over, looking at Hyojin expectantly. Hyojin took off the gourd artifact from his waist and handed it to Ziyun, asking Ziyun and ASU to take it to the room upstairs. Miko-sama's soul is currently temporarily residing in the gourd artifact, and it is difficult to predict how long it can last. So Hyojin didn't delay. He wanted to let the mother and daughter see each other for the last time, so he can say all the things he wanted to say but didn't have time. After Ziyun and ASU went upstairs, Hyojin asked Belle, "What happened in the village in the past few days? Tell me in detail." Belle nodded hurriedly and recounted everything that had happened in the past few days. After the chaos that night, the village mobilized thousands of ninjas to search all the nearby areas, but they couldn't find Naruto, and just when the 3 generations thought that Naruto was missing, everyone found that Naruto had returned home and was lying on the bed, sleeping as if nothing had happened. Yesterday, Team 11, who had been trying to circumvent the Danzo's encirclement and return to the village, encountered the Danzo. The 2 sides fought, and Kakashi and Guy were outnumbered, and both were seriously injured. Fortunately, the advisory Elder Mito Hamura arrived in time and saved Kakashi and the others from the Danzo. Because of this matter, Uchiha almost fell out with the Danzo, and even the 3 generations severely reprimanded the Danzo. Sure enough, the Danzo couldn't hold back anymore. Kuroto sighed lightly, and then his expression changed as he said, "Not good. I, Shursui, was attacked, then wouldn't he be exposed for covering for me?" Thinking of this, Hyojin asked Belle, "Did anyone ask you about my whereabouts?" Belle shook her head, "No." Hyojin then asked, Did the village arrange anyone to look for me? It seems that no. Hyojin felt relieved and said, "That's good." The 3 people of Team 11 encountered the Danzo yesterday and were rescued by the advisory elder Mito Hamura. In other words, in the past few days, except for the 3 people of Team 11, no one knows whether Hyojin is in Team 11 or not. And from the current situation, it seems that the colleagues of Team 11 didn't say anything about Hyojin's absence. That is to say, as long as Hyojin makes up a reasonable excuse, he can freely go in and out of the village. Of course, Belle is only a Chunin, so the information she has is limited, so Hyojin used the ninja crow to communicate with Jishui. From Jishui, it was confirmed that Team 11 didn't give up Hyojin, but reported to the 3 generations that Hyojin was separated in the chaos. When fighting in a 4-member squad, a part of the squad will often be separated to spy for information. So in an emergency situation, it is very common for a squad to be separated. These guys, Kuroto smiled faintly. The feeling of being protected by someone was really heartwarming. After learning about the general situation, Hyojin deliberately went out of the village, disguised as a travel-worn person, and rushed back from the gate, and was immediately summoned to Naruto's office. The 3 generations asked some questions as usual, but Hyojin can see that the 3 generations are a little absent-minded. Obviously, the things that happened in the past few days have put a lot of pressure on them. After leaving the Naruto building, Hyojin secretly sighed. It's not easy to be Naruto. Next, Hyojin went to the Uchiha clan's land and saw Jishui, who was recuperating from her injuries. As soon as she saw Hyojin, Jishui said, "Kuroto-san, as you expected, Danzo, Sama was really coveting my man GQ Sharingan. I was too careless." Hyojin said, "Fortunately, Kakashi and Guy were also there at that time." Jishui nodded. "Yes, if it weren't for the 2 seniors, I'm afraid that Danzo, Sama, would have succeeded." At the same time, in the Uchiha clan's house, "Patriarch, can't you even trust us? Why didn't you tell us about the police force and the secret division?" "Yes, the secret force that you have cultivated in private is also a member of our Uchiha clan. Why do you keep it a secret from us? Who exactly is that division captain? Do you still want to hide it from us until now?" A group of Uchiha elites clamored one after another. This feeling of being distrusted made them very uncomfortable. Fuyue crossed his arms in front of his chest and said nothing with a calm face. He wanted to investigate this matter in private, but because there were too many my ninjas who saw Shino's complete tailed beast transformation at that time, everyone was curious about the Uchiha clansmen who defeated Shino one-on-one. As the rumor spread, somehow it evolved into a rumor that Uchiha had a secret division that even the 3 generations Naruto didn't know about, and the one who defeated Shino one-on-one was the division captain of that secret division. For such a rumor, even many my Jonin believed it to be true, so the Uchiha clan was suddenly in an uproar. After finally dismissing the group of Uchiha clansmen, Fuyue saw Itachi walking through the corridor, so he stopped Itachi. For some reason, Fuyue always felt that since the night Sasuke was kidnapped by the members of the Akatsuki and Itachi rescued Sasuke, Itachi has become different. It is a change in temperament. It is difficult to accurately describe in words. Chapter 3:11. Itachi stood in the corridor and asked Fuyue, "Father, what can I do for you?" Fuyue looked at Itachi with his arms crossed and said, "Itachi, if it weren't for you, your brother Sasuke would have been killed by the Akatsuki." After learning that the members of the Akatsuki sneaked into the Uchiha clan and kidnapped Sasuke, Fuyue was both shocked and angry. First, Uchiha Hiragi disappeared, and then Sasuke was kidnapped. The dignified Uchiha clan of the shinobi world has become a place where the enemy can come and go as he pleases. This really annoys Fugaku as the head of the Uchiha clan. Itachi shook his head gently. "Protecting Sasuke is my responsibility as an elder brother. As expected of my son." Fuyue, who has always had a straight face, showed a rare smile. He can see Itachi's talent in his eyes. As long as there is no accident, Itachi will inevitably grow into another strong Uchiha clan that is not inferior to the Jishue clan, and as the new generation of Uchiha clan grows up one by one, the status of Uchiha clan in the village will inevitably gradually rise. This is something that the Naruto clan can't stop even if they want to. After all, among the new generation of Naruto clan, only the disciple of the 4 generations Naruto clan, Kakashi, is left. In fact, at this point, Fuyue's rebellious thoughts have faded a lot. The reason is that the external pressure is too great, especially after it was revealed that Hiriko has successfully developed a forbidden technique that can plunder other people's Kekkei Genkai. Fuyue has already regarded Hiriko as his #1 enemy, because once Hiriko's forbidden technique spreads out, then all the Kekkei Genkai shinobi in the shinobi world will be in danger. Of course, what Fuyue doesn't know is that his worries are actually superfluous. Hiriko's Kekkei Genkai fusion ceremony requires the perfect cooperation of many factors, such as the right time, the right place, and the right people to succeed. Even Hiriko himself had barely escaped death to get here. Fuyue asked again, "Where are you going?" Itachi replied, "I'm going to visit Jishue-san." Fuyue nodded and immediately said, "The village is under martial law. Don't run around for the time being." Jishue's house. After listening to Homasubi's narration of what happened that night, combined with the information he got from you, as well as what he saw and heard that night, Homasubi had a general understanding of what happened that night. There is no doubt that Obsidian's goal was not Naruto from the beginning to the end. The reason why he kidnapped Naruto was to lure Umbu Team 11 away. To be more precise, it was to lure Jishue out of the village, and then arrange for Hiriko to disguise himself as Jishue to assassinate the 3 generations Naruto and provoke civil strife in the Mai clan. If Obsidian's plot succeeds, then the Mai clan will inevitably suffer a great loss. Orochimaru's motive is also very clear, that is to obtain the Sharingan. Perhaps he learned about Hiriko's attack plan through Shino, so he decided to take advantage of the situation and attack the Uchiha clan when their defense is at its weakest. Shino's idea is probably the same as Orochimaru. He also wants to take advantage of the chaos in my clan to devour Ziyuan, who possesses the power of Miko, and achieve another leap in strength. As for Danzo's motive for attacking Jishue, Hyojin doesn't even need to guess. Fortunately, this group of people all have their own ulterior motives, otherwise my clan would have had a hard time that night. At this time, Jishue stared at Hyojin and asked, "Kuroto-san, what should we do next?" Hyojin glanced at Jishue and saw that his face was pale without any trace of blood. So he said, "Don't think too much about it now. Heal your injuries first. We can talk about other things later." Jishue hurriedly said, "Kuroto-san, my injuries are nothing." Hyojin shook his head. "When dealing with the Akatsuki, we can't underestimate the enemy. So let's heal your injuries first, and when your injuries are healed, we can discuss the next step." Jishue nodded and said, "Okay." Hyojin just came out of Jishue's house and met Itachi at the door, who came to visit Jishue. Seeing Hyojin, Itachi quickly stepped forward and saluted, "Kuroto-san." Hyojin smiled and nodded. As expected of Itachi Uchiha, Itachi rescued Sasuke from the hands of the outer members of the Akatsuki. Hyojin has already heard from Jishue that Itachi rescued Sasuke from the hands of the outer members of the Akatsuki, but what Jishue doesn't know is that the young woman who was with Shino is not an outer member of the Akatsuki, but one of the Sannin, Orochimaru. In the original story, although Itachi also had the record of killing Orochimaru, but at that time, Itachi was only 13 years old, and he also had the Manjikyu Sharingan. At this time, Itachi is only 11 years old, and he doesn't have the Manjikyu Sharingan, but he was able to rescue Sasuke from the hands of Orochimaru, which is very commendable. Itachi looked around and said in a low voice, "Kuroto-san, I have something to tell you." Hyojin said, "Come with me." It didn't take long for the two to come to a secluded grove. After looking around with the Byakugan and confirming that there is no one around, Hyojin said, "Go ahead." Itachi didn't answer and directly activated the Sharingan. In an instant, his ink-colored eyes were dyed scarlet, and 3 Magatama spun rapidly in his eyes, and finally condensed into a 3-edged shuriken. Hyojin was slightly stunned. "You awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan." Itachi quickly closed the Manjikyu Sharingan and nodded. "Well, the enemy that night was very strong, and I almost died in her hands, but at the critical moment, I awakened this pair of eyes." Itachi actually didn't know that when Orochimaru kidnapped Sasuke, that is, the moment he passed by Shino, he had already awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, which is a whole year earlier than the original story. Hyojin, who recovered from his shock, asked, "Did you kill her?" Itachi nodded. Orochimaru was killed just like that. This thought flashed through Hyojin's mind, and he didn't know what to say for a while. After pondering for a while, he asked, "Are you sure she's dead?" Itachi hesitated a little and explained, "I used the Manjikyu Sharingan jutsu. This jutsu is called Amaterasu, and it can burn everything. I saw with my own eyes that she was burned to ashes by the Amaterasu. If she didn't have any special means, then she must be dead." Amaterasu. Hyojin thought about it carefully again, and he felt that Orochimaru was probably not dead. After all, if Amaterasu could easily kill Orochimaru, then in the original story, Itachi didn't have to use jutsu to seal Orochimaru. Because of the Orochi Runsho substitution jutsu and Orochimaru's extraordinary human body transformation, other than sealing jutsu, it is difficult to kill him with ordinary means. Chapter 312. Converging his thoughts, Hyojin asked, "Who else knows that you have awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan?" Itachi replied calmly, "Only you, senpai." Hyojin was a little surprised. "You didn't even tell Jishui?" During the assessment period, you're not allowed to mention anything related to the assessment to Jishui-san, otherwise, it will be regarded as cheating. Yami-senpai said that this is the rule you set. After a pause, Itachi continued, "Awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan is the threshold to participate in the assessment, so I haven't mentioned this matter to Jishui-san for the time being." Hyojin smiled slightly. "Then why didn't you tell your father? He is the patriarch of your Uchiha clan. Don't you trust him?" Itachi calmly analyzed. The current Uchiha clan and the village happen to form a situation of mutual dependence, and this situation can greatly ease the tension between the two, so it is not suitable for the emergence of a new Manjikyu Sharingan awakened in the clan at present. Obviously, Itachi has also noticed the subtle relationship between the Uchiha clan and the Konoha clan at the moment. Whether it is Amitsukami or Akatsuki, both have shown terrifying strength, so the internal contradictions between the Uchiha clan and the village have been covered up by the huge external contradictions, and the two sides have to unite to warm each other. If Uchiha's strength further expands at this time, it may break the balance that has been achieved with great difficulty, and let the hidden contradictions surface again. Hyojin said, "You are doing the right thing." Itachi said, "In order to defeat Shino, Yami-senpai has already exposed his identity. If I reveal the Manjikyu Sharingan, even if Naruto-sama can tolerate it, I am afraid that the clan may not be willing. After all, the estrangement between the Uchiha clan and the village is too deep. It is not something that can be made up in a year or two." Speaking of this, Itachi asked curiously, "Yami-senpai, is Yami-senpai really a family elite secretly trained by my father?" Ahem. After coughing twice, Hyojin said, "Uchiha Yen is actually an orphan outside the village. He grew up outside the village since he was young. He's not one of the family elites that your father secretly trained." Itachi nodded. "No wonder I've never heard of Senior Yen in the family." Itachi's words gave Hyojin a good idea. He smiled and said, "However, it's actually quite good to arrange such an identity for Uchiha Yen." Itachi said worriedly, "But will Naruto-sama think that Uchiha is plotting something? Your Uchiha is up to no good. Is there a need to doubt it?" With a chuckle, Hyojin continued, "It's not necessarily a bad thing to make Naruto-sama more afraid. Itachi fell into deep thought. Hyojin continued, "Well, now that you have the Manjikyu Sharingan, I hereby announce that you are officially a member of Amatsukami, codenamed Homosui." Itachi's face lit up with joy. "Did I pass?" Hyojin nodded. "You have awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, so you naturally have this qualification." Itachi asked again, "What about Yami-senpai?" Hyojin waved his hand and said, "She also passed. Her codename is the same as yours, Homisubi." Root base. Staring at the two severed feet in the glassware, Danzo's eyes lit up. The previous sneak attack on Jishui could be said to be the moment when Danzo was the closest to awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Just a little bit more, and he would have been able to possess Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan, possessing the ability to play with the will of others. Unfortunately, at the last moment he failed. But for him, the only thing that is worth celebrating is that the attack on Jishui had some basis. After all, at that time, Jishui was indeed suspected of assassinating 3 generations Naruto. So after the incident, he was only reprimanded by 3 generations and didn't receive any substantial punishment. His power and status in the village also didn't suffer much. At this time, a researcher wearing a white robe came over and said, "Danzo-sama, this is the test report you asked for." After receiving the test report, Danzo-sama glanced at it and immediately frowned. "These values are all wrong. How can you make such a simple test wrong?" The researcher wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and explained, "Danzo-sama, we have repeatedly checked these values, and there is no problem with them. The cell tissue we extracted from this pair of severed feet is not human cell tissue at all. It is simply—" The researcher opened his mouth, but for a long time, he couldn't think of a word to describe it accurately. Danzo's face sank, and he carefully read the test report again, then muttered to himself, "With these values, it is impossible for cells to survive. How did he do it?" When he heard that Hiriko had completed the forbidden technique to plunder other people's Kekkei limit and had 5 types of Kekkei limit, including the Sharingan, Danzo was so jealous that he almost went crazy. He felt that it was a waste to let a useless person like Hiriko obtain such an ability. So he immediately got his hands on the severed limbs left by Hiriko in the village and gathered the researchers to study it. However, the data on the test report left him at a loss, because it was not the data that normal cells should have. Beep, beep, beep. At this moment, an alarm suddenly sounded in the laboratory. Danzo didn't panic, because he found that the source of the alarm was the glassware in front of him containing Hiriko's severed limbs. Through the glass wall, Danzo could clearly see that the broken legs in the glassware suddenly bulged, and in just a few breaths, their volume increased by 4 to 5 times, and this trend is still continuing. Bang! Soon, the 2 swollen meatballs exploded in the glassware. Seeing the only clue left by Hiriko explode in front of him, Danzo's face turned livid, and he fiercely swept the staff in his hand, smashing the glassware in front of him. The researchers at the side kept quiet out of fear. After a long time, Danzo waved his hand and asked all the researchers to leave the laboratory, then called a root ninja and said, "I want to know Hiriko's whereabouts." The root ninja replied, "Danzo-sama, we are already investigating his whereabouts. Once we have his whereabouts, we will immediately arrange an assassination." Danzo roared, "Who said I want to assassinate him? What I want is his technology. No matter what method you use, even if you have to buy it, you must buy it from me." The root ninja froze for a moment, then immediately replied, "Yes, we will arrange it immediately." Danzo then roared, "Where's Orochimaru? Why hasn't he done what I asked him to do?" Chapter 313. After accepting Itachi into Amatsukami and instructing him not to act rashly for the time being, Hyojin and Itachi parted ways. On the way home, Hyojin thought to himself, "Oh, compared to Jishui, Itachi is really much more cautious." Itachi was the first to tell Hyojin about his awakening of Manjikyu Sharingan. It is conceivable that in his mind, Hyojin is a completely trustworthy person. But even so, Itachi did not confess his unique Manjikyu, Sharingan, jutsu from the beginning. It was not until Hyojin asked him about the battle with Orochimaru that he briefly mentioned his Manjikyu Sharingan, jutsu, Amaterasu. As for the other jutsu, he still did not mention it. In this regard, Hyojin understood very well. Take Kuroto, for example. He will not show all the cards in his hand to others. Trust is precious, but at the same time, it is also fragile. It didn't take long for Hyojin to return to his home. Shoi returned the gourd to Hyojin, then knelt down with a bang and said, "Kuroto-sama, thank you so much this time." As soon as he took the gourd, Hyojin immediately sensed that Miko's spiritual body was no longer in the gourd, so he helped Shoi up and asked, "Her Highness Miko," Zhu Sui shook her head with a sad expression. Obviously, after fulfilling her last wish, Miko-sama's spiritual body has naturally dissipated. Tying the gourd to his waist, Hyojin asked again, "Where is he?" Shoi replied, "After seeing Her Highness Miko, Her Highness cried a lot and just fell asleep." Kuroto nodded and immediately took out a bell magical artifact from his arms. "His Highness should have mentioned this magical artifact to you. Give this magical artifact to Zuen and let her carry it with her, so that Shino, who has devoured the monster Morio, will not be able to sense her location." Shoi quickly took the bell and said, "Yes, sir." After pondering for a while, Hyojin asked again, "What are your plans next?" Shoi said without hesitation, "Everything is at your disposal. Well, for the time being, you can live in my house." After a pause, Hyojin continued, "As for Yuen, I will ask Naruto-sama to send her to the ninja school next year." Although Yomi was killed by Hyojin, Shino, who coveted the power of the Miko in Ziyuin, is still alive, and there is the Akatsuki organization behind Shino. If he sends Miko and Sasuke to Ziyuin and Akatsuki to the land, he and Shino being Yudo Kami and Kami, Miko, and Yu, Venus, and Ms. Satu domain. As for sending Ziyuin to the ninja school, this is also Hyojin's decision after careful consideration. First, Mai's ninja school is different from the bloody education of the Mist Village. In addition to teaching ninjutsu, Mai's ninja school will also teach cultural classes. After all, a person who is illiterate, unable to count, and unable to understand a map will not become a good ninja. So in this way, it can save Hyojin the time to guide Ziyuin's cultural classes. Second, although Ziyuin has a strong power of the Miko in her body, the danger she has to face is not small, and the ninja school can not only hone her will, but also improve her strength, which is very helpful for her future growth. Third, Ziyuin is the only legal heir of the Miko in the land of demons. 3 generations will inevitably closely monitor her every move. So instead of waiting for 3 generations to send people to monitor Ziyuin at home, it is better to directly send Ziyuin to the ninja school, which can also dispel some of the doubts of the village leaders. After retrieving the gourd artifact, Hyojin went out again, bought some fruits on the street, and walked towards my hospital. After inquiring about Kakashi and Guy's ward number, Hyojin went up with the fruits. In the ward, Guy put his left hand in plaster behind his back and did one-handed push-ups with his right hand and exercised on the ground. Kakashi was lying on the bed, reading a small book with a pink cover. At this time, Hyojin came in with fruits and said with a smile, "Are you okay?" "It's nothing, just a small injury." Guy immediately jumped up from the ground, directly took a fruit, and took a big bite. Kakashi closed the book and said, "Kuroto, I have something I want to talk to you alone." Hyojin chuckled. "Okay, let's go to the rooftop." Soon, the two arrived at the rooftop. Ho! A cool breeze blew past, causing the bedsheets that were drying on the rooftop to flutter in the wind. At this time, Kakashi stared at Hyojin and asked in an unusually serious tone, "Kuroto, where have you been these days?" Hyojin didn't hesitate and directly replied, "I went to the land of demons." "Land of demons?" After a pause, Kakashi asked, "Is it because of the Miko?" Kuroto nodded. "This time the Yomi cult of the land of demons rebelled, and our team, 11, is also responsible for it." If we had completely eliminated the remaining members of the Yomi cult during the last mission, maybe there wouldn't have been this turmoil. Kakashi sighed. Yes, last time we didn't kill the leader of the Yellow Springs cult, and our class does have some responsibility. Even now, Kakashi was still somewhat puzzled. At that time, he had clearly used the 1,000 birds to pierce through the chest of the Yellow Springs cult leader. Logically speaking, the Yellow Springs cult leader should have died without a doubt, but the other party did not die. Of course, if he knew that Hyojin even cut off the Yellow Springs cult leader's head and still failed to kill him, he wouldn't be so depressed. Hyojin said, "So, I wanted to go and have a look, so I asked you Shuei to cover for me." Kakashi opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he just sighed. Hyojin smiled. "Say what you want to say, I don't mind." Kakashi hesitated for a moment and said, "Next time this kind of thing happens, just tell me directly, our class as a whole. I want to say it, but I'm afraid it will scare you." Hyojin smiled bitterly and cursed inwardly. At this time, Kakashi's somewhat lazy eyes suddenly sharpened, saying, "By the way, the guy who kidnapped Naruto this time is very strange. Until now, I still can't tell what kind of method he used at that time. If you meet him, you must be extra careful." Hyojin has already learned the details of how Naruto was kidnapped that night from Jishuei, and he knows that it was the Obsidian who did it, so he didn't find it too strange and casually asked, "Then how will the village arrange the protection of Naruto in the future?" Kakashi shook his head. "It hasn't been decided yet. This time's incident shows that the Akatsuki organization has already grasped Naruto's identity, so one Umbu class is obviously not enough." Chapter 314. After leaving the hospital, Hyojin strolled on the street. Because there are several blocks that need to be rebuilt, Mai has become a big construction site again, and the streets are full of vehicles transporting construction materials. Fortunately, the three generations issued a state of emergency in time and evacuated a large number of villagers, so although many buildings were destroyed, the casualties were very limited. Of course, this is also due to Hyojin's contribution. If it weren't for Hyojin dealing with Shino in time, even if the villagers were evacuated, they wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of those tireless and fearless terracotta army puppets. After strolling on the street for a while, Hyojin quietly came to his secret laboratory. Hiriko's Kekii Genkai fusion ceremony was completed more than 10 years earlier than the original time, which greatly disrupted Hyojin's plan, making him very tired and miserable these days. But what worries Kuroto the most is that with the rise of Hiriko's reputation, more and more people will be interested in the Chimera technique, because the potential of this technique is too great. As long as one has the slightest bit of knowledge, they will not deny that this technique can change the entire shinobi world. I must find a way to get the Chimera technique as soon as possible. Previously, Hyojin wasn't in a hurry because he could use Shino as a channel to make Shinichi spend some money to get the Chimera technique. But now that he's seriously injured Shino with his fire release clone and prevented Shino from devouring Ziyuan, it can be said that he and Shinichi have formed a great enmity, and even Shinichi will probably be hated by Shino, so this channel is obviously broken. I can only look for Orochimaru. After thinking for a long time, Hyojin has only one choice left. Otherwise, he will have to plan an ambush on either Hiriko or Shino and capture one of them alive. But doing so is not only time-consuming and laborious, but also extremely dangerous. If he is not careful, he will be besieged by the Akatsuki, so he will not choose this method unless it is absolutely necessary. After making up his mind, Hyojin left a shadow clone in the village, and then quietly left the village. A few days later, Hyojin came to a dense forest in the land of Tion. At this time, Pharmacist Do came out from behind a big tree, saluted a Hyojin, and said, "Senpai Orochimaru, Sama is waiting for you. Please come with me." Kuroto nodded and followed Kuroto. Not long after, Kuroto saw Orochimaru wrapped in bandages in an underground palace. Although he didn't use the Byakugan, Hyojin Senpai's body is not in harmony with him. This feeling may be difficult for others to perceive, But for Kuroda, who often needs to familiarize himself with his doppelgangers, he is very familiar with this feeling because this disharmony is the feeling of disharmony between the body and the soul. Did Orochimaru change his body again? After a short pause, Suijin continued to ponder. It seems that his injuries are more serious than I expected. Cough. After coughing twice, Orochimaru said in a hoarse voice, Kuroda, you didn't come here just to see me, your teacher, did you? Hyojin said tentatively, your body? Orochimaru smiled and said, hey, I was tricked by the Uchiha family's kid. Orochimaru was obviously laughing, but when it came out of his mouth, it gave off a gloomy feeling. Itachi Uchiha. After a pause, Hyojin said, he is not an ordinary Uchiha. Hyojin's words seemed to remind Orochimaru of something, and an indescribable expression flashed in his eyes. However, this expression was fleeting, and Orochimaru's expression returned to its previous coldness. Orochimaru said, tell me why you are here. Hyojin went straight to the point, Ghost Yero technique. Orochimaru smiled and said, I knew it. You came here in such a hurry because of it. Hyojin also smiled and asked, you must have succeeded, right? Based on Hyojin's understanding of Orochimaru, he would never let go of any new technology that involved human body modification and Kekkai Jinkai technique. Moreover, Hiriko's Ghost Yero technique could fuse multiple Kekkai Jinkai technique at once. No matter how disdainful Orochimaru was with Hiriko, he would not relax in the slightest. This could be seen from the fact that he went to observe Hiriko's Kekkai Jinkai fusion ceremony as a woman. Orochimaru weighed the pros and cons and said, I do have Hiriko's original Ghost Yero technique, but I can tell you that Hiriko's success was not only because of the Ghost Yero technique. Hyojin asked curiously, he also developed other forbidden techniques? Orochimaru said contemptuously, with Hiriko's ability, developing the Ghost Yero technique is already the limit of his intelligence. I heard that he was subdued by the old man in just one move. It's really ridiculous. After teasing Hiriko for a while, Orochimaru said he was able to survive the rejection and survive until the end of the Kekkai Jinkai technique, not only because of the Ghost Yero technique, but also because he mastered a kind of dark medical ninjutsu that he obtained from the land of demons. Hyojin thought to himself, dark medical ninjutsu. No wonder I felt traces of medical ninjutsu on his body at that time. Hyojin's Kekkai Jinkai snare project is a clone, so the body's rejection is very light. So he is not too greedy for the dark medical ninjutsu. After pondering for a while, Hyojin asked, what price do I have to pay to obtain the Ghost Yero technique and the dark medical ninjutsu? Land of Rain, Akatsuki Base. Pain looked into the distance and asked, so, this operation failed? Obsidian shrugged. Pain said in a flat tone, stop this meaningless action. In Pain's eyes, Obsidian's operation is meaningless. His philosophy is very simple. That is, to use absolute strength to suppress all disobedience and bring peace to the world with high-pressure rule. Obsidian said, Shino is hiding something from us. This time it was also because of his unauthorized action that the plan failed. Pain said, I will let Hiriko investigate this matter. Mentioning Hiriko, Obsidian said, Hiriko's combat experience is too lacking. You'd better send him to perform more tasks. His loss this time is too ridiculous. Standing at the top of the tower, Pain slowly raised his hands and said in an indifferent tone, they're just tools. Don't worry too much. As long as the Gekido Golem is ready, the shinobi world will be ours. Obsidian reminded, don't forget, there is still the troublesome Amatsukami. Chapter 315. Hyojin looked at Orochimaru calmly, waiting for him to state his conditions. My condition is Itachi Uchiha. You send Itachi Uchiha to me. I can satisfy you with all the techniques of Chimera Jutsu and Dark Medical Ninjutsu. Orochimaru's tone seemed very casual, but Hyojin could clearly feel the subtle changes in his tone when he mentioned Itachi Uchiha. Sigh, I knew it. This guy is obsessed. Hyojin secretly cursed. If Orochimaru coveted Uchiha's flames more than Itachi Uchiha, then after Itachi Uchiha's Manjiki Sharingan, with Orochimaru's temperament, he will certainly value Itachi Uchiha more, which Hyojin expected. After a while, Hyojin said with a wry smile, "You are making things difficult for me. Even you can't deal with an opponent. How can I succeed?" Orochimaru sneered. "Kuroto, I know your ability. As long as you are willing, you will certainly have a way." Hyojin curled his lips. "I have a piece of advice, but you may not like it." Orochimaru stared at Hyojin. "Let me hear it." "I advise you to give up Itachi Uchiha." After a pause, Hyojin continued. "You targeting him is like a mouse targeting a cat. There will not be a good result." These words are not Hyojin's sarcasm to Orochimaru, but his sincere advice. If Orochimaru wants to seize Itachi Uchiha's body, the last step of soul devouring is inevitable, and soul confrontation happens to be the specialty of pupillary Kekai ninjas, especially Sharingan Kekai ninjas. Even if Orochimaru can subdue Itachi Uchiha through other means, this last step of soul devouring is by no means an opponent of Itachi Uchiha, who has Manjiki Sharingan. In the original world, in the soul confrontation, Orochimaru even lost to Uchiha Sasuke, who only has 3 Sharingan, and his identity as a devourer has become a devourer, so if Orochimaru insists, his fate is likely to be worse than the original world. After all, Itachi is different from Sasuke. He will not leave Orochimaru's soul in his consciousness space. At that time, Orochimaru's soul is likely to be destroyed. Orochimaru naturally did not accept Hyojin's kindness. His face sank. "Kuroto, it seems that even you are starting to look down on me." Kuroto shook his head. "No, I will never underestimate you. I just think that you shouldn't waste too much time on this, or maybe you should change to a better target. Anyway, there are so many Uchiha clansmen. Why do you always have to focus on those that are difficult to deal with?" Kuroto nodded. "Humph, I don't need you to teach me a lesson." After a light snort, Orochimaru continued. "If you want the technique, exchange it with Itachi Uchiha's body." Hyojin looked at Orochimaru silently. He knows that Orochimaru won't understand his good intentions if he doesn't really touch blood and walk through the gates of hell. The Miko-sama's rule in the land of demons has collapsed, and Ziyuan is now alone. Even with Mai's protection, she's just an insignificant little girl. Shinichi feels that as long as he is patient, it's only a matter of time before he devours Yuan and obtains the Miko-sama's power. After deciding to leave the Akatsuki organization, Shinichi's first step was to move materials and experiment materials. Although this base is nominally Hiriko's, in fact, many of the laboratories inside belong to Shinichi, and many of them contain important experiment materials. Since he wants to leave the Akatsuki organization, he naturally won't let go of these materials. Knowing that Shinichi won't give him too much time, Shinichi acted quickly. Taking advantage of Hiriko's pain in the secret room, he emptied more than half of the laboratory with a storage scroll. After completing the transfer of materials, Shinichi adjusted his mentality and walked towards the tower where the leader of the Akatsuki organization is located. It didn't take long for Shinichi to see Pain. Pain looked at Shinichi and asked indifferently, "What's the matter?" Shinichi said respectfully, "Something happened to Hiriko's body, and I need some herbs, so I may have to leave the country of rain for some time." Shinichi knows very well that he must find an excuse to leave the country of rain. Otherwise, even if his strength has greatly increased after devouring the Morio, he will never be able to escape from the country of rain. And Hiriko's hidden danger is undoubtedly the best excuse. With Hiriko's current physical condition, even if he survives the hidden danger, he will still need a long time to recuperate. During this time, no one will suspect his whereabouts, which is more than enough for him to escape from the country of rain and hide in any corner far away from the country of rain. Pain doesn't care much about this kind of thing, so he didn't say anything and just nodded indifferently. Shinichi felt like he was pardoned and breathed a long sigh of relief. Just as Shinichi was about to turn around and leave, Conan, who was beside Pain, stopped him and asked, "Why do you look so nervous?" Shinichi reluctantly turned around and explained with a smile, "I don't know why, but in front of the leader, I always unconsciously feel nervous. Maybe it's because the Rinnegan is too frightening." Conan coldly snorted and said, "I hope you don't have too many thoughts that you shouldn't have, and focus on working for the organization." Shinichi quickly nodded. "This time it's my responsibility. Please forgive me. There won't be a next time." After leaving the tower, Shinichi directly put on a raincoat and rushed towards the direction of the Country of Fire. Not long after Shinichi left, Shinichi walked out a nearby building and said with a smile, "This guy really has a problem. Just a simple bluff, and he exposed himself. My village." Chapter 317. Because all the members of Class 11 were injured, especially Homasubi, Homasubi's injury was quite serious, so Hokage-sama gave Class 11 half a month off. Hyojin took advantage of the free time during the vacation to take Ziyuin and Isuho to tour the My Village. During this period, Hyojin mentioned to the three generations that he wanted to send Ziyuin to the ninja school. The three generations also hoped that Ziyuin, the future ruler of the land of demons, can be on good terms with Mai. So he agreed to Hyojin's proposal without thinking and also said that he will instruct the ninja school to give extra care to Ziyuin. It must be known that the financial income of the My Village is divided into two major parts. Among them, one is the financial support of the daimyo of the Land of Fire, which is similar to the other 5 great shinobi villages. The other part was the income from the various missions entrusted to him. Although the Land of Demons is a small country, it is still a country. Once En grows up and regains the rule of the Land of Demons, then Mai will be able to get a variety of tasks from the Land of Demons alone. After touring around the My Village, Hyojin brought Ziyuin and Isuho to the Hyuga clan. Richa personally received Ziyuin and led Ziyuin to the Hyuga clan mansion. In the practice field of the mansion, Hinata and Ningxi, who were the same age as Ziyuin, performed a soft fist competition for Ziyuin that the Hyuga family is famous for in the shinobi world. After standing in the field, the two little guys saluted. Byakugan open. After the ceremony, the two of them simultaneously opened the Byakugan and put on a soft fist posture. Ningxi said gently, "Hinata-san, be careful." Hinata nodded. "I know, big brother Ningxi." Ningxi said no more and immediately launched an attack. His figure flashed, and his palms, one in front and one behind, struck towards Hinata. On the sidelines, Hyojin narrowed his eyes and said to himself, "Not bad, little guy." There was no need to doubt Ningxi's talent in soft fist. Even though he was only 6 years old, his fist technique, footwork, rhythm, and even the use of the white eye had far surpassed his peers. In comparison, Hinata was obviously much inferior. It wasn't that Hinata's talent was that bad, but it was mainly because Hinata's character was too indecisive, which was reflected in his punches. His punches were sloppy, and his moves were not coherent enough. There were too many flaws, and it was easy for others to see through his intentions and launch a series of counterattacks. Although the soft fist of the Hyuga clan was not as powerful as the Iron Fist, it was not inferior to the Iron Fist at all. And what Hinata lacked was precisely this fierceness. So her soft fist seemed to be missing its soul. In the eyes of experts, it was just an empty shell. Off the field,